Hello again, people at home and around the world. Louis Tucci here live from the mothership itself, just slip sliding our way back into things for 2023. I'm here with Ian Robinson and Paul Gabriel, members of the Maxon ZBrush team. We have got a cavalcade of an experience lined up for you, some of the latest features that we've been working on, and a very special presentation that hopes and promises at the same time to keep you exhilarated and gripping the edge of your seats. I just rode in off the white rapids that are the mean streets of Los Angeles on my raft. Hair still a little damp.
No, you're looking good, man. You're looking solid.
So did you have a nice New Year?
Oh, I had an amazing New Year.
Right.
How about you?
So far, so good. Yeah. Everything's all right. Paul Gabriel over there grinning and smiling emphatically. What do you got going on there, big man?
I'm in game mode now, right? Yeah. So I got to have the headsets, that's the microphone. I'm just ready to start clicking on the keyboard.
That's because Paul's been hanging out with me, and I'm a gamer, and I'm just slowly converting him to understand gaming. He made the mistake one time. He said, I have an Xbox, but I haven't opened it. I'm like, Paul, what are you doing, man? We can be playing together. Let's go.
I don't know what to say. I'm going to stay far away from the conversation. I'm going to make fun of for my vintage affinities. We've been working diligently to prepare and get the latest version of ZBrush ready. Is it safe to say that today we're going to show the people something very special, and they're probably, without further ado, wanting to see the latest stuff?
Well, we're gonna say a lot of cool stuff. Honestly, a lot of everything we're showcasing today, in my opinion, has been a really amazing add-on to my already existing artistry pipeline. I really love all the features and finding new ways to improve my process, my time, especially my time, because everybody here who's an artist knows for a fact that time is crucial. You got to get stuff done. So everything we're showcasing today is really about, maximizing your time and just letting you create with full control of the direction of your vision. So,
I think that's a poignant analysis. And also at the same time, I would say that for me, the most exciting thing that's happened that we're going to show is something to do with masking, which I have advocated for over a decade. Say, oh, that masking is very sophisticated. And people say, oh, he's being a jerk. No, I'm not. And you'll see why again today that masking is underlying.
You like the mask?
He loves the mask.
I think we came at it with the ZBrush Summit for everyone around the world watching and folks at home smashing the like buttons around the world. I think it's important to note that we're coming back around to this idea of revisiting some of these things, and they continue to evolve and expand. We saw with the Burt, with the fire chicken jacket at the ZBrush Summit, but I think today they're going to be really excited to see some slime and things like that coming forth. So, also on behalf of everybody on the Maxon team, globally speaking, I want to wish everybody a happy New Year. And thanks for the continued support and all of the sort of commentary that comes our way. We really appreciate the fanfare and the gestures of kindness and kind words of people saying. It really means a lot. And what we do is we try to provide, like you said, tools for you to reach your fullest human potential. And I think that's something we can continue to get behind. So without further ado, I think who's going to lead us off is Paul Gabriel. Paul Gabriel, take it away. First of many features.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. My headphones are in the way.
The first of many features here with Paul Gabriel, ladies and gentlemen. Smashing the like button and subscribe all day long.
I can hear him. You're fine. Don't worry. We're good. Yes, we're ready to go. We're going to be cranking here. It's going to be a lot of fun for us. So we're going to start with showing off some new items for you all with inside of ZBrush. So we're going to put my ZBrush screen up so you'll be able to see that, and we'll walk you through that. So we're going to be starting with myself going through some items, and then Ian will be joining us. We'll be doing a swap at some point here. A quick.
Can I get away with one again?
Woo! Quick swap here.
A little musical chairs, but not as much as what we did at the summit. For those who saw us at the summit, we were dancing.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into it. So here you go. Here's something new for you all. So I just put some examples of this feature on, just giving you some ideas of things that you're going to be able to do. This is a very fun feature. I know a lot of the beta testers are really excited to see this and have some fun with it. So I want to walk through just, in essence, the simple understanding of this, and then I'll put it in action for you all. So, they're going to get just some two spheres here. So I'm going to do a mask on this side. I'm going to do a mask on that side, and I'm done. Eyeballs.
Love it.
All right. So I'm happy to introduce you to a new feature called Slime Bridge. So this is going to be a really fun feature for you all. So you're going to make a mask in two areas. You can just click your little Slime Bridge button, and it's going to evaluate the mask and give you bridges across. So this is, I know you all are going to find some really fun, exciting ways to use this, like the beta testers were, and some of the examples I was showing. So you can see it's just creating some bridging across. It's looking at the two masks. So I want to touch a little bit on what exactly are happening in the settings, so you're all aware of this. So there's only 4 sliders. So I'm going to knock down the bottom 2. We're just going to look only at bridges right now. I'm going to click that again. And what it is in essence giving you like bridging across the model. You don't have to worry about necessarily your polygon doesn't need to be low polygon. You could have a dense mesh. You could have a fine mesh. So this will all do some nice bridging across. So as you can see, if I go from above, it's got a nice little arc happening for you as well.
You should see what they're saying in the
Oh,
chat.
yeah?
Venom everywhere.
I'm not watching the chat. So,
Symbiotes
Symbiotes
everywhere.
everywhere.
so my
What a time to be
pose-
alive.
My Spider-Man pose for this. All right, so you can see it's bridging across. So obviously the first, this is your bridges. So if I have more bridges in here, obviously if I throw a couple more bridges up, put it at 40, hit that button again, I'm going to get more bridges going across the masking that you have. But we also have a tension slider. So if I'm going to put this a little bit high, just so you can see the difference. I'm going to click that. And it's just now you can see, you can go straight across if you don't want to have an arc in there. Okay, so the other thing then we wanted to do is just besides having some simple bridges going across, we wanted to create what we're calling branches. So I'm going to undo that. And then I'm going to throw some branches in here. What do you think? What do you think? I'm going to say 20. I like 20. I'm feeling good about 20. And I'll slime bridge that. And then what that's going to do now is give you the bridges. But if I zoom in here, there's going to be other ones now that are growing off the existing bridges. So these are called branches. So like think about it like a tree. So they're coming off the existing bridges. So I'm going to knock down the tension because it looks just more fun when you do it with the little arc way that you have. So there you go. You can see them better. So you can see these are like a tree branch in essence, right? So, and then you have capillaries, which Louis, you want to say how you like to pronounce the capillaries for me?
Capillaries.
Capillaries.
Man, like, that's a fun way of saying it.
Capillaries
Capillaries.
over capillaries.
Well,
Okay.
we've added the capillaries feature.
Okay. So what the capillaries are going to do for you all is it's going to now, in essence, create bridges, is the easiest way to explain this, between the bridges. So instead of having something growing off and keep going to where the mask was, the capillaries are going to actually grow between the bridges. So if we start really cranking that up a little bit more, well, that's excessive. That's getting crazy. I don't need to get too crazy, but you can see you can get up there pretty high, and then just click away, and you can create some very unique, fun things with this that I'm pretty confident you're all going to love for this for sure. Right? Hold on. I think I'm going to turn my touch off. I accidentally turned my touch on. Right. So this is 2 masks. So you can also do 1 mask as well, and then let the slime bridge take control of that. So I can see this. Here we go. Zombie city happening. Right. So here's an example of maybe where I might want to use it. This is from my man Lucas. Here's a little kaiju together. All right. So I'm going to turn off the Polypaint for now. I'm going to come in here. And I'm going to just think of a different way. So I'm going to say, let's put a mask through here, maybe. I want one there. And again, you're going to need a second mask so it knows what to bridge with. So we're going to make another one through there. So I got a nice little bit of that happening through here. We're going to go to my slime bridge, click that, let it do the calculations of the 2 masks. And then obviously I have my tension, I have bridges, I have branches, I have capillaries. I have them all happening at the same time. And then that's what you got. So like something like this. So I want to touch base on the sliders. I might not want capillaries or branches. I might just want bridge, and I might want some tension, maybe a little bit more so I can get straight across from one mask to another mask. So it's just a fun name to say too, slime bridge.
Slime bridge.
Yeah, I love it.
Slime bridge.
I personally love it, yeah.
So if you also remember, when I first had this model, there was Polypaint. So let me turn that back on, and you can see the Polypaint is also maintained for you when you're going to use this. Obviously, this is new existing geometry that's created, so there's no paint there to give it. But what I like to point out, when we turn on our polyframe, you can see you actually also get polygroups. So every bridge has its own polygroup. So you as a user will be able to now to go and color those and do whatever you want, select out certain bridges, and then manipulate that bridge, if just that one, if you want to, maybe do a little switching of the mask, and now everything is masked but that one bridge. Okay, so there you go. There's a little bit of a slime bridge.
I love it.
Just saying it again, slime bridge.
Slime bridge.
It's almost up there when we did polygroup it. Okay, so
Yeah.
it's up there. What I kept saying polygroup it a lot, and we got videos made. So slime bridge.
The fact that we have
There
the
you
word
go.
capillaries in the application of capillaries.
or capillaries.
Either way,
Whichever
or you want to slice it.
Louis, it's like the navigation. You want to go
Yeah.
navigation? You want to go with? You want to go the way we?
Tomato,
the same.
tomato.
We're going to
It's
bring
all
that up
the
right
same.
now. Color.
Like, yeah,
That's who
it's
you
just
are. in
Very
Canada.
nice. I know those with the medical illustrators watching this are probably going to love that a lot too.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Capillaries.
Capillaries. Okay, so here we go. Let's continue moving on. I'm going to turn on my live booleans. So here's something again, like Ian had started the show with, is that really a lot of these features too, or the thought process is trying to speed up things for us all while we're working within ZBrush and making artwork. So one thing that's really important for me when I'm working on low polygon items, I like to use ZModeler. But obviously, I don't want to look at it this way where I've got faceted wheels and I've got a very boxy mouse droid here. So I'm going to select one of them, go to Dynamic Subdiv, and turn on Dynamic. So you can see now the body, that's what I want. Well, I want every other subtool to have Dynamic on, because for this particular model, that's what I was using. I was using Dynamic Subdiv. So I can now go to the subtools, and there'll be a nice action here for you to say apply last action to all subtools. So I'll click on that and I'll say yes, go ahead and do it. And then now every single subtool, and you can see the wheels are now nice, smooth, and ready to go. So this is going to allow you to apply any undoable action within the tool palette. So this is again just in the tool palette. So another example of that where I might want to be able to use this is, let's say, with Stager. So I might want to make a home stage, okay? And then now I can say, go make a home stage for every other subtool, right? And then now I'm going to turn on my gizmo, do the, as you all like to call it and known it from the day we released it, pizza boxes.
Pizza boxes.
Pizza boxes. And then we're having a party. So,
I'm kind of guilty too. I say it all the time. I say pizza boxes.
You say
It just rolls off so much faster.
well, just so you know, the icon's actually a subtool with
Yeah.
check marks. Is what the icon
Yes,
actually is.
let's be specific about
It
that.
is.
It is not a
It's-
pizza box.
it is.
It's
Go-
not a pizza box.
Listen, let's
Okay,
stop right there. You don't want
it's-
people asking questions in the chat. Hey, where are these pizza boxes located in the documentation? I can't find pizza box anywhere.
They love the pizza box, but we know what you're talking about. And that's the important part.
Oh, I have symmetry on, so we're gonna move this model around, right? And then so again, like we were doing, now I want to maybe make a target, okay? And then to all subtools, say okay. And now what this is giving me the ability to is I've moved my model in space. So this is one nice thing is I can say all to home, and now they're all home, right? So this is important for me, especially if I want to start using something like ZModeler in Symmetry, right? I can make changes to this model, and then I can switch back to my target at any time by just coming up in here and then just saying, how about now do all target, and then they're all moving. Okay, so Stagers, this is one advantage that you all have been using it for. So what's something that we've done and updated is local sim. So now your local sim, as you can see, is symmetrical. So I am working symmetrically on this model, even though in space, as you can see, or I'll turn on the floor. So you can see it's in a weird location. I've rotated the model. So you now with local sim will have the ability to take a look at your symmetry along that ray. So you can even, if I want to say grab an insert mesh brush and I want to put something new on here, I like to start with a cube. You can even just start drawing out a cube, and then that's going to be symmetrical as well.
Woo.
Right? So you have, in essence, 360 degrees now of symmetry available to you, because with the new local symmetry update, you're going to have symmetry where you want it at the model. So what is actually driving this, I'm going to turn off our pizza boxes,
There you go.
is the gizmo. So your gizmo and now is you're establishing center point of interest. Okay, so what I mean by that is that blue arrow, this line is the symmetry line, and that's what the X side is looking at. So this, as you can see, is sitting where I need it to be, so it knows the right and left, even though this is somewhere else in space, and rotated it around. Right, so something that we're all going to probably do as we're working and moving things around, we're going to be doing stuff like this and like this. Okay, so I want to highlight this again, the fact that it's using the gizmo in this scenario. So you can see my red dot, hopefully out in the distance. So it's up here. If you don't see it, it's in this direction up here. So when I'm in the front, you can see it above it a little bit. Is it coming through all right? That in chat, throw up and say if you can see that or not. I can't.
Check. Can you see what's going on too? But Paul really wants to make sure this is showcased. This is super important. I really love this. This has changed my whole workflow with how I do stuff. I now because when Stager was established, I really love the ability to just make sure that my model is always symmetrical before I send it off, and then just kind of break it. Now I can send it off and keep that symmetry. That's amazing. So. Yep. They say they can see it. You were good.
So I'm just trying to make sure you guys understand. You can see where the gizmo, if I turn it back on, so you can see the red arrows because I'm in X symmetry. Red is X, so that's why the one dot way out here in space and the one's here because I have moved my gizmo. So what we wanted to do is give you guys the ability to kind of reset the gizmo as well. Like there are multiple ways to do this. I like to hold the Alt key and then reset my gizmo that way, so I can click on a dot. But what we've also done is within ZModeler, we've added a new feature for you, which is set symmetry. So this is going to be available to you on all three actions. That would be polygon face, and you can see in polygon edge, there's also a set symmetry. And if you're hovering over a point, you're also going to have set symmetry.
Hey, let me pause you for a second.
Yeah. Talk to me, Goose.
Gordon. A really great question coming in here from Astrotellus Eve Trials. What if you messed up the gizmo angle and want to go work on local symmetry like that? Do I have to restore the angle by hand? What I mean that's manually.
This is exactly what I'm showing right now. You don't have to store it by hand. That's what this new feature this is one of the things in ZModeler can do for you now is we've added a set symmetry so you can control what the symmetry parts are where that gizmo is going to sit in essence. So right now I've turned it on for all three. I've got it on for polygon face, I've got it on for edge, and I got it on for point.
What a time to be alive.
You like that, right? So now you can see it says set symmetry, click first point. So I can click the first point. Now it's saying get the second point, and then you get the second point, and you can see the gizmo snap right here. I'll go to solo mode. You can see it snap back in the middle. So in essence, it's looked at this point and said between those 2 points, that's where the gizmo has to sit to be dead center between those 2 points. Okay, so same thing if I did a face. If I click the face first and then go to the other side, click the face second, it's going to do the exact same thing. It's going to put the gizmo where it needs to be. Now, another thing that you can do that I personally also enjoy, I'm going to show you something new here in a second, is I like to hold the Alt key as well and click on a dot and just pull your cursor down and see, point that little crosshair. You can see that crosshair as I move it, point it to another vertex point along that edge, and it'll snap. So this is aligned now exactly where, so you got your symmetry axis again. So there's two ways that you control, but we added a new way within ZModeler to do that. Okay, so something else that I want to show that we added, we'll turn solo mode back off. All right, is I'm going to now switch. Let's go and say, let's switch to this model in here. All right, and I want to start making some new chips for this. In essence, these little chips things that are in the mouse droids. I want a new one. I used, obviously, to do this, I used nanomesh. I want to go make another new insert mesh brush with this. Okay, so I'm going to look at the chips here, and I'm going to say, I only want here, we'll solo this out so it's visually easier for you all to see. And I'm going to just select just this one, and then let's say, you know what, let's take also that one too. So I've got just the chip by itself. Now, the thing I want you to remember, okay, and this is why I want to kind of solo it out, this is still in different parts of space, right? I rotated this mouse droid around, right, to show you guys that now you have symmetry ability no matter where you are in space, and you can use your gizmo now to control that. But what we've also added, which is a very nice feature that's within ZModeler as well, which is called the set camera perpendicular. So this is actually a request from a lot of people that use this feature, came to me and said, hey, can we have a different way of using this besides only selecting ZModeler? So those of you watching asking, here you go, we've added. So what this does for those that don't know, you click on a face, and now I'm looking straight at this little chip that was on my mouse droid, right? So I can use ZModeler, but what we've also done now is we've added the ability with the gizmo. Okay, so remember I was talking about that Alt key idea. So I can click on this dot, drag across, and click there. So now I've aligned, even with this click here, it's aligned that blue arrow where I need it and that green arrow. So now you guys with the blue arrow or green or red, whatever one you want to use, if you now hold the shift key and click on the arrow, you can see I look straight at the little shape again. So not only do you have the ability, and this is a camera movement, so it's not now just in ZModeler, we've added it to the gizmo. So again, you're going to hold the shift key and click on any arrow, and that arrow you clicked on, we are going to make a camera movement and have you look straight at the mesh. So an example why I might want something like this is now I want to turn this into an insert mesh brush, but I need to be looking straight at the mesh. I don't want it on an angle and craziness. So I want to be adding this up a little bit, right? And then start manipulating and changing things in there, maybe, and start, let's see, so you can see you hold the shift and that's where it's at. So I want to be able to, again, say, I don't want that. I want it to be here and put along the angle that I want. Okay. So this is a nice way to move around. Ian, I see your head going over there. What's going on?
Well, I know. I just kind of want to bring it back too, because I wanted to ask you. Maybe you can show with Poseable symmetry with the local sim, combination, how that could benefit a user as well. I want to make sure that they're aware. I know it's a tool that I've seen some people use, and I've started using it more now, especially with Stager and local sim.
Yeah, so what you're bringing it up is also, he's talking about, there's another way that we've added for you to reset this. Okay, so I'm going to just load the demo head in here real quick so we can come in here. So we have the demo in here, and again, this is, I'll have local symmetry on. I can move this in space now, and now that I have local symmetry on, if I put symmetry back on, and we'll switch to a sculpting brush, right? I want to be able to have this be symmetrical along the axes and where I want them. Okay, so I can even reset my gizmo with use Poseable symmetry. So if I, in essence, turn this off and do a little bit something like that. Okay, so again, I've moved this around in space and moved in different locations. You can also go to transform and use Poseable symmetry, and you can see the gizmo actually gets put back to this Poseable center of the head. And this is going to work as long as the mesh, if I turn this on, is the same topology on the left and right. That's what Poseable symmetry is looking at. It's looking at geometry that the vertex points on the left side and the right side are identical. So something like this wouldn't work for, like, say, a Dynamesh or a Sculptris Pro, but that's why we added all the other options for you with ZModeler. You can go pick your 2 points, your 2 faces, your 2 edges, or you can do what I was doing with the Alt key and grabbing things, right? So, and then the same thing here, again, like hold the Shift key, boom, I'm looking straight at the point. So if I hold Alt, so that arrow, I can hold the Shift key, click on the arrow, and you can see now the camera's looking exactly at that arrow. This is also important for you guys that think about you using those brushes that are camera plane dependent, like ZProject, that you're going to use the history brushes, any of the slice brushes, the curve brushes, they're camera plane dependent. This is just allowing you guys to look specifically at an area on your model and move the camera to that area. Okay.
Well, you down there a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Number one, way back up in the top, Charles Logan from Parts Unknown asks, does the new symmetry also work with the ZRemesher?
No. You're gonna have to bring it back, and then, so that's a great example is using Stager would be the best way to do that, is make a Stager point. Right. So it'll work with ZRemesher, but not symmetrically. It's the symmetry of ZRemesher won't be able to see that right now.
Okay, second, Dodruku, how about the other way around, rotating the gizmo so that it's perpendicular to the current view?
Rotating it so it's perpendicular to what?
The current view. In inverse.
No, well, you're talking about the Shift key? No, it's in essence, that's what it's doing. It's making perpendicular to the camera, right? Okay. So that vertex point is looking straight at the camera, so it's moving the model in essence in a perpendicular.
These are great questions. Keep them coming. Really appreciate it. It really helps everybody else. Can I snap the gizmo in one? I'm just going to keep coming at you.
Okay.
It's coming at you, Paul. You ready?
This person's name is Pizza Dog is the name here. Really great to go with the pizza boxes. Can I snap the gizmo in one axis without rotating it when snapping to the vertex?
Wait, can I snap the gizmo in one axis?
One axis without rotating it when snapping to the vertex point.
Yeah, well, if you want to just move your gizmo, then you can hold the Alt key. If this is what you're asking, you can move that to wherever you want. So you have all degrees of rotation. So I'm unlocking the gizmo. So
Okay.
that I'm just using the Alt key as my preferred method. I don't
Yep.
actually touch the lock. The
And
point of the Alt key is it can look at the vertex points and actually move them to that location. And then you know it's sitting exactly along that vertex, which I use a ton.
Yeah.
I use a ton this
Okay.
feature, especially here. Here's an example where I like to use it. Since we're going off script,
there wasn't a script to begin with. I mean, who said anything about a script here? Live on the floor from the
since we're
mothership
going-
itself and Shadow of the Hollywood sign, Paul. We're here live.
Since you're going off script here, I changed my focal. Since you're going off script here, so this is something where I like to do it, right? You've moved your gizmo around and things like this, right? And now this object's just floating in like different angles in space. I will do this all the time where, okay, I want to kind of maybe stretch the cylinder, right? So if you do this and reset, you're not aligned along the cylinder, okay? So for me, I like to hold that Alt key again, click on the vertex point, and now just point to another vertex point along that edge. And then now see, I can stretch the cylinder perfectly across. Yep. It doesn't matter where it is in space now. Like this is the kind of stuff I use this a lot with. So we're just adding to this. We're building upon this thought process and this ability by now adding the shift key, click on an arrow, and we can look directly at a vertex point on any mesh. Even if it's subdivided, if it's 1 million polygons, it's 10 million polygons, it's 20 million polygons. That's what ZModeler can't do. If you can't pull up a mesh that's 10 million polygons and use that set per particular ZModeler as easily as you can this way now with the gizmo. So we're just taking that process and that idea.
And it will effectively go across all axes, not just the Z, as you were speaking.
Yeah, it'll go. You can go across any axis that you want.
Yeah. Actually, again, it's really useful, like Paul was saying, for Sculptris Pro users or Dynamesh users. You know, you bring in the ZModeler tool in. Sometimes it could be interesting. So this makes it a lot easier to get the look of where you're trying to go. So you can just continue sculpting.
Right.
Oh, I want to sculpt.
Right. I'm going to give another example that might help. That's also a sculptural example right now. I want to give you a sculptural example and think about this in a different way too. And this is just giving you a little nod of what Mr. Ian's going to be showing with Redshift. So this is actually Redshift materials live with inside of ZBrush that you're looking at now.
Prelude of things to come.
These are what Ian's going to be also highlighting and diving into, but I wanted to show a fun way to look at this now. But so as an example, again, let's move this off space. You can see it's sitting in perfect symmetry world. I love that I'm looking this way, like there's people here or something like there's actually people.
There's an
audience. I know
audience.
you are here and they're there, but I'm looking straight ahead at nobody right now.
That's okay. Yeah.
That's
a bit of a reflection.
Having people.
It's a bit of a reflection. I mean, if you look at the glass, you see yourself.
Well, okay. Well, thanks. That's what I like. Okay. So here we go. We'll move it in space. We'll do a little rotation, right? And now I'm going to say, let's move to our favorite, just because you might be watching Damien, the old Damien standard, right?
Yeah.
So you can see this is symmetrical, right? So you can see I have symmetry along there. So let's even do something like, let's put a stroke there. And then I'm going to put another one right there. And then I'm going to go to stroke and I'm going to interpolate. I'm going to say 4 and I'm going to say interpolate. And bingo, I've got now an interpolation between the two strokes that it's given. And then, of course, that is symmetrical. So this is taking advantage now of local symmetry with another feature like interpolate. So it's really opening up some things. I can even take something like, let's say curved snap tube. I'm going to change this up a little bit. So I'm going to go to stroke modifiers. I'm going to turn on my size. Let's just say I want to now start adding some other nice elements to this mask. And I want to use, this curve ability to do that. And so you can see I can start having this. So I'm going to say, well, when I do this, let's click on the material that I'm using, which is this one. And then now when I'm drawing it out, I can start adding some nice little detailing, maybe change up the face a little bit. And I can use this curve brush to maybe do a little design there, something in there. Yeah, there. This is where I add a little Rob Ross. There you go. Right. So this is all happening symmetrically. And mind you, again, the mask is not sitting in the perfect world access. Right. So this new local sim update is given to allow you with insert mesh brushes, curve brushes, sculpting brushes. I just use it with interpolate. Right. It can be used on a higher dense mesh. It can be on a lower polygon mesh. So there's a lot of ways that hopefully you're all going to be able to really take advantage of this. And I'm really looking forward to see what you guys do with this, because I think I've been having fun with this for sure and enjoying this. So The other thing that we also wanted to do is I'm going to turn off this and let's select so you can see this a little bit better. Oh, I'm giving a little sneak preview now. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so let's look at this model in here.
Just a second here.
Yeah, go
Before you
ahead.
get carried away.
Hit me with your best shot.
Fire away.
Okay, we can't. No, you can't do too much.
No.
Ahmed Shah, is there a way to store multiple gizmo states so that
No.
we will be able to go back and forth between different local symmetry options? The answer is no.
No,
Can you hear me out
can't.
there in the world?
No, there's only one gizmo per subtool. Each subtool has its own gizmo state, though. So it's not one gizmo to rule them all. So every single subtool will have its own gizmo state. But there are ways to do that. Think about it in multiple ways. I could technically just use polygrouping to do that. I could use specific edges. I can use specific vertex point to use that. So what I mean by that is you can have, make a new polygroup here, and we can locally move the gizmo to that area. Okay. So even if it's off somewhere else in no man's land, you can hit this little, which is the original mapping map quest icon, as I like to remember by, and you can see the gizmo moves to the center of that polygroup. So if you're getting really smart with your model, you could use just things on the mesh, in essence, kind of a way to store different times where you can go and line up your gizmo in any location that you want. But there's only one gizmo per subtool. So, but good point to make out is each subtool has its own gizmo state. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Paul. Really appreciate it.
You Louis.
Right.
You got it, mister. Okay, so let's take a look at the geometry. And I know a very popular feature for a lot of people is Sculptris Pro.
Oh, yeah.
I know there are some people that use this a ton. And I've seen a lot of people just embracing this a little bit even more than just even trying to use, say, something like a Dynamesh. I've seen a lot more people just sticking with this. So I'm just going to make some strokes in here. We're going to make some different size stroke. Oh, look at that. It's beautiful. It's different size stroke. Okay, and then we'll go really tiny in here too. Okay, so something we've done to even keep pushing us sculpturally to be using Sculptris Pro, because this is allowing dynamic tessellation. So my details are based upon my draw size. Okay, so however large my draw size is, the triangles will be bigger. If I go to a smaller draw size, the triangles will be larger, right? So if we turn this off, you can see that brush stroke is a lot cleaner than this brush stroke, and that same thing up here on the top. So I'm going to turn my polyframe back on. And what we've added now in the stroke palette in Sculptris Pro, we've added the picker like we have in Dynamesh. So you can use either the picker or the subdivide size slider. So all you have to do now is you click and you drag and look at the subdivide slider. As I move around the mesh, I'm going to go slow to make sure that's coming through. And my helpers here to my right, stage right, will tell me if they're seeing this or not. Stage left is smiling over there, so they're seeing it. So here we go, right? So you can see wherever I go, what it's actually doing is, because here, I'm going to dock this just so you guys can visually see it a little bit better. What's happening here, so you can use the picker or the slider to do this, is I have adaptive size on. Okay, so that means the draw size is a certain size. So Sculptris Pro by default is looking at your draw size, and that's what's in essence controlling the density of the triangles. So again, bigger draw size, bigger triangles, smaller draw size.
I want to pay homage. Charles Logan is throwing this in here a couple of times. I have no idea what this means.
You don't know what this
Lisa needs braces moment.
Oh, Lisa needs braces? You don't know what this is 100% a Lisa needs braces moments for sure. So Lisa needs braces is a thing I do in my streams to make sure you guys are paying attention, because I'm giving you important information. If you hear me say Lisa needs braces, you might want to stop looking at your internet, Facebook, Instagram, phone.
They're watching the stream.
Pay attention is what it means.
And in their case, playing a video game. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's happening here is ZBrush is seeing the draw size. In this case, it's 13. And when I click and drag and pull over triangles, it's adjusting the slider to give me that size of triangle with the current selected brush size. Okay. So for example, if I go to these bigger ones and now I do the same brush stroke, right, it's going to start wanting to try and give me those same triangle size. So again, you just click and dragging over. Now, there's two states to this though. Okay, if I turn off adaptive size, this is going to be very different. So we're going to switch to a different brush so you guys can really see this. So right now my subdivide slider is really high. I'm going to put it to 1, which is the default for this. And I'm just going to sculpt across. Okay, and you can see this is just building up triangles across the way. Okay, so now because I've turned off adaptive size, no matter what draw size I do, I'm going to get the same triangle size. So I can go the smaller, I can go bigger. Nothing's going to change in my triangle size. It's going to stay the same. So if I smooth things out, right, I'm now going to get the smoothing based upon what my subdivide ratio is set to. So no matter what draw size I go to, right, you can see I'm going to get the same size, whatever I want. So someone like, he's probably watching, or maybe
Shane Olsen,
Shane
ladies and
Olsen,
gentlemen.
everybody.
Oh, no, he's here.
Guilty. He's
He's
right
here.
there.
Right? So
Yeah, ears are perking up, he says. They
he's
better
one
be
of these.
perking up,
He's
pal.
an artist, as an example, because this is something he came to us with. He goes, guys, it would be really awesome if you had that ability, and not only that, allow the slider to go even lower. So we've also let the slider go down to 0.01. The versions that you have now at home with you goes to 0.05. So that means you can go to 5 times smaller triangles. Again, 5 times smaller. So besides adding the picker ability, we've added the ability for the slider to go smaller. And so now that adaptive size is off, if I click and drag, what the slider is going to do is start to move to the actual size of the triangle.
Hold on a second here.
Right,
Let's
so-
pay some respect here. We really want to pause for a second and draw attention to the fact that ZBrush as a software is ultimately impacted by the great work that's done by members around the globe, across the community, spanning the 4 corners of the earth. So, you know, if you ask, we listen, and if it's something that can be done that makes the workflow easier for everyone around the world, we're happy to try to implement that. That's the first thing. The second thing is that some of what you're showing is maybe being seen for the first time. I'd like to slow you down and maybe perhaps expand, not really, but I'd like to expand the demonstration to include possibly the concept of using the Sculptris Pro to paint topological density where you need it. So don't overstep that, okay?
Okay,
Before we get
Louis be put in charge of tangents over here, Captain Tangent over here, which I like.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so here we'll just grab something again. We're Sculptris Proing it, so sculpturally we're adding triangles.
Looking out for the white belts.
Okay, thank you.
One
And
white belt at a time.
That's it.
I have a pretty low subdivide size, so I'm getting pretty dense triangles, right? So that means the brushstroke, as you can see, is really detailed, right? Compared to if I put up that slider, then see, it's very different. It's very different between those two now, right? And then as a user, now I can go, you know what? I'm not happy with that. I want that. You can now click and drag, and you can find out what that number, because I have no idea what that number is. Okay, 0.06. I would have never known that. And this one is 2.1. Well, no, I want this because that's the stroke I actually want from here on out, right? So this is the benefit. And what Louis is also highlighting is
Come on down.
you can use this with paint as well, of course, which is important. And this is why I think a lot of artists that I've spoken to over the years since we've had this that have really embraced Sculptris Pro and I'm really enjoying it. So I'm going to throw in some RGB. I'm going to fill that with some white. And then now we can grab any color that we want. And then now you can see I can paint with this, whatever, however I want. Again, the brush size now, okay, you're going to get the same quality of stroke because I have adaptive size off. Okay. So if you want to go with a smaller triangle, I have to come over here now, drop this slider, and then now I'll have a smaller triangle and then your strokes. And remember, I'm on like something that's super low polygon, right? So this is what Sculptris Pro is allowing you to do. And since we're there, since we're here, since we're here,
what we're doing next,
here,
Paul.
since we're here, I'm going to go back to the mask because it's just
Like
more
Ozzy and
fun.
Harriet up in here. Jesus.
This is more fun to look at the mask.
Here we go.
in Here,
Foghorn Leghorn and the little guy.
Okay, since we're here, you actually also can hide a portion of your mesh if you want to as well, right? So
Yes.
you can look at what portion that you want to work on and what you don't want to work on as well. So you can look at this. We have to look at that and see what you can do there with that too. So since we're here like this, my model is a beta model, so it's got problems in it. So you can start sculpting also on this. But now if I turn Sculptris Pro on, I can still use Sculptris Pro to sculpt on. So obviously my brush strokes is dependent upon what I've set in the slider. Again, if I turn it off, you're going to get that. Very different. And turn it on, and then you can see a much better stroke going across there. And then you can visually just look at a section of your model and work on with Sculptris Pro as well. So this is why I think if you've never used Sculptris Pro, why a lot of artists have embraced it and really starting to use it a lot more over the years since we originally put it out there.
You might have blown some people's minds here. It looks like in the chat with the color demonstration. Again, when using it, you could also turn off the Z-add and just paint the topology where you need it.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely. Show real quick. There's people coming in for the first time. Do a quick show.
People coming for the first time.
Show them the first time. The magic of
the first time. Okay, so here, let me grab another
around the eye region. Perhaps a demo head would be a great example.
Oh, you want to demo head it? Okay, I'll
make
demo head it. Okay, don't make me jump up there. Okay, so here is your demo head. Okay, if you're using Sculptris Pro, you can't have subdivisions because we're adding tessellation and triangulation. So we'll fill this with color now. And okay, and then now if you want to turn off Z-add and then now pick a color, you can just paint with that color. So you can see the stroke is actually giving you, so here we'll go to Damien Standard now. We'll throw on some RGB and you can see the sculpt that you're getting and the paint that you're getting in here, right? So you're getting a nice consistent stroke that's happening in there. It's starting to become like Eye of the Tiger or something.
Sounds looking good.
Yeah, right. Not really. Not really. We're just on a Captain Tangenting right now, right? So there you go. So, and you have the ability to work with this. And of course, now with the new local symmetry, you can take advantage of that as well, right? And you just start moving it off in the kiltered land and then start painting and sculpting with that as well. And you can see I am still symmetrical, even though I've completely moved the model in space rotationally. You can see where the teeth are actually originally living for this guy in there. Okay, good, super. All right.
Thank you, Paul Gabriel, ladies and gentlemen.
Of course. Well done. Of course. All right, so moving along, let's move along. We're going to look at this little ship that I have here. And this one for me is a big game changer for me for how I like to work and what I like to do. I live a lot in the masking world. So this is also Louis' favorite, as you heard from the beginning of the show. I think masking is crucial to sculpting. So we're constantly thinking maybe different ways you'll all be able to mask off stuff. So I'm going to say, let's look at, say, a certain piece here. Let's look at, say, this, and I'm going to mask that off. So what I have here, I'm just going to solo this out so you can kind of see what I have here, right? So I got this middle shape where now the only thing unmasked is right here. So there isn't a mask around everything here. So I'm going to say, let's load something. I'm going to load an alpha that I made. So I'm going to switch to the masking square. I'm going to import an alpha that I had made in here. So there we go. So I made my own little logo here. And so now I'm just going to say, let's position that mask. I don't know. Let's position that right about there. That's where I like it. Okay. So now I've got, in essence, two masks. I got this original mask that I actually used polygrouping to get. And then now you have this mask now, right? That has a bordering edge. So what you can do now in masking, so let me get down to the masking here, and in mask region, there's now an auto region fill. So I'm showing this one in a different way than we did at the summit. I'm going to fill that, and you see it actually works towards the logo now. So it's not filling because the border, there's this border mask, and then there's this border mask. So what we're doing is filling all of this in. So instead of me having to switch to say something like the mask pen now and we're going to turn off Sculptris Pro and do this, right? Like there's no way I'm going to be able to do that perfectly. So now you can. Now you just hit your auto region, you fill your mask. I might want to throw a little paint on this since we've been talking about paint. Fill it with your color. There's my logo for my ship. And that's where I want it. Okay, so it's about looking at the border regions to be able to work on this and move this around, right? So as an example here, we'll switch to another model. Let's switch to her. Okay, and let's take a look. Let's look at her shoulder and her arm. All right, so I got a masking pen. So it does not have to be like the image that I drew out. You can freely draw whatever you want, whatever shape you want. I can draw maybe more shapes if I want to draw some more shapes through here. It's just whatever you need to draw on a mask. Okay, so now I've got those shapes. You can come back down here and say auto fill those regions and they get filled, right? So it's very useful way to take a look at this. Okay, so what you also have added is there's going to be times where maybe you do something else or you're drawing out an alpha that does have a bunch of borders, i.e. I want to draw something, again, we'll make some new ones in here. So the key is having a complete border of your mask. So we'll just put a bunch in here real quick.
You could do this manually
by just
drawing them on the surface, of course.
Yep, you can manually, you can use an image. So I'm going to make her like maybe, I don't know, cheetah arm or something like that, right? So this to me is going to be maybe a faster approach to just quickly get what I want shape-wise all over her arm, wherever I want them to be. But when I'm done, there might be a time where, you know what, I want some of these to have maybe even different coloring to them, possibly, or something like that. Obviously, the auto region now is going to fill them all for us. But I can say, how about you analyze it first? Like take a look at my masking borders first, and now let me, the user, decide, okay, you know what? I want this one filled. Let's fill this one. Let's fill this one, and let's fill that one. So I'm making marks of masking within those borders. And now if I hit fill region, only those get filled. So you have the ability to do just a global fill all those borders that you want, or you can pick and choose and letting it know which ones you want to get filled and which ones you don't want to be filled, because maybe you want to do something different here in this region than these regions. So this is just a great way. You can reverse your mask, of course, and look at it differently.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's really good too, because thinking about it as from an artistic standpoint, there are a lot of times you want to create a really custom mask, and I don't know if anybody can relate to this, but you draw something and then you're like, okay, I want to fill that, and then you're just scribbling away. That's what I do. Yeah, that's ridiculous. But
Wait, how does that work? How does that work?
One more time, get that on camera.
And then,
That's a meme right there.
Then it's like, okay, great, but I want to do multiple masks. I don't want to do one at a time or two at a time. I want to be able to do like 15 of these things. So you can draw all these custom shapes and then select which ones you want to be filled and which ones you don't. And I think that really brings in some custom approaches. And I know everybody's going to find a really unique use on how to use this feature. So don't sleep on this one. I think this one's really, really cool. I'm using it a lot. So definitely. What's up?
Something wild. Just I need to talk into the microphone. They're telling me behind the scenes that I can't
quiet.
be heard. You're too quiet today. I got to yell with these guys. It just occurred to me that if you drew this shape out there, it would be kind of interesting. Well, never mind. I'll keep it to myself for a development meeting later on.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
great. Wonderful.
Leading the horse to water and not even showing him where to drink.
Just remember, you don't want to be doing this.
Don't do
It
it
happens a lot. Trust me, when you get this, you'll realize how much you are going to use it, because obviously when I go to the version 2022, I find myself like, oh, wait, I don't have the fill option anymore.
That's right.
That's when it tells me, or at least for my workflow, that I know I'm going to use this feature a lot.
Better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it, is the old song.
Amen, man.
It's
Amen.
going from 2023 that we're showing right now back to 2022. I can't tell how many times it's like, oh, I'll just do this and this and go hit fill region. I'm like, oh, wait, I'm in 2022.
But you don't got it.
So that's a sign for me that this is going to get used quite a bit. Yeah, like Ian said, don't sleep on this region, this feature. It's a big one for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so
That and the well, never mind.
what?
That was
Go ahead.
that and the spicy fish at the local Thai place down the street.
Oh,
Don't
okay.
sleep on that either. But that's a whole other kettle of fish. Keep on going, Paul.
All right. So let's take a look at something else here that we've done. So this is, again, this is not my piece. This is definitely from some of these pieces are from artists from their community that shared with us. So thank you for sharing these two. So
Members of the ZBrush family, thank you so
Yep.
much again for providing these assets.
this is a great example where some artists, and I've seen work within ZBrush, where they're not just sculpting, they like to paint as they sculpt. Some artists like to put down some color, right, to start figuring out that model. It helps them kind of push the sculpt a certain direction that they want to go. So this is a great example of looking at this little dragon. He is a Dynamesh, right, version right now that has paint and is geometry is Dynamesh. So we've made an update. So we are now officially onto ZRemesher 4.0. So now the one big item too that I want to point out, besides the features I'm about to go over here with this is also Apple Silicon compatible. So ZRemesher now, if you have an M1 or an M2, this will work with that technology. And not only that, ZBrush itself has been updated and officially will work with the ARM Silicon graphic Apple technology in the M1s and M2s. So if you have an M1 and M2, you're going to fully take advantage of that technology now in your hardware. So it's made a big difference for me. I'm an Apple guy. I use Apples. I have a Mac Studios. It's really been really nice to be able to take advantage of that processor now, this full capabilities. So those two things have been updated. So that's also part of 2023. Okay. So what we've done here is we added a keep Polypaint option. And I think this is going to be really beneficial for artists like this that are just trying to get the model, get the sculpt, start laying down some paint. But now I want to remesh, but I don't want to lose my paint. So I'm just going to keep it at the defaults here at where we're at. And I'm going to hit now ZRemesher. And then now this is going to take a look at the ZRemesher. And if you might have noticed, the version 2018 is gone. That version's gone because it's no longer compatible with the new technology, i.e. the ARM technology is not compatible, right? So all that updating that we have to keep up with hardware, the 2018 is gone. So for those who are asking in the chat, it's gone. You're not going to have it on the Windows or Mac side anymore for compatibility reasons with hardware that's coming out. So there, we're remeshed now, and you can see that I still have my Polypaint. So here is another option we've added that I think this is a, Ian, you've got the word for the stream. Don't sleep on it.
Don't sleep on it.
Don't sleep on it.
it.
Again, this is kind of a production thing, I think, as far as when you're remeshing, trying to figure out what do you want. Like, I don't know what I want. We all are probably used to remeshing and then undoing and then doing some changes and then going back and forth and so forth and so on, right? So what you can now do is use retry. So I actually don't have to undo now. And I can say, you know what, the target polygon count was enough. I want to try 15 now. I want to see if that's going to work, and I want to retry. And what ZBrush is doing is going all the way back to the Dynamesh version, not the version I'm actually looking at. It's looking at the original mesh to go and do the remesh. So I don't actually have to do an undo. And there's going to be a big reason why I want that ability here in a second. Once you guys see, I'm going to do a couple remeshes here so you'll really see. So many of the features in here are going to take advantage of this new retry. And in our documentation, once we release, you'll see what features take advantage of this. So you can see I've got now more topology, which means more of the paint is going to be able to maintain because it's vertex color. So you got to have enough vertex to withstand the paint. I'm going to say, you know what, I'm going to go even more. I want to go up to 40 and I'm going to retry that. So again, we are going back. And the one thing I'd like to highlight up in the top, there's a little RC now number right there on the top. You'll see R, you'll see RC, and you'll see C now with ZRemesher. So the ZRemesher itself, the other thing that we've also added to try and speed up the process even more for you is there is now a system that's remembering past remeshes that was sent to the system, i.e. the mesh itself. So this actually speeds up. So we don't have to send the model every single time now. So in this scenario, it was retrying with a cached version of your model. So I didn't have to send the little dragon again. It was already saw the original dragon I sent and just using that. That's going to save you so much time, especially when you guys are doing the things like that are 10 million, 5 million, 6 million remeshing. You should see some good time difference changing there because you'll be able to now manipulate and say, okay, well, maybe this is the one I like. And now what retry has done is instead of me going the old way of undo and going seeing the sculpt and then seeing the remesh, I can actually now just cycle through the remeshes only and see which one do I like the best now. And then that's it. I don't have to keep going, undoing, seeing the sculpt, remeshing, because I ran into so many times where like, I don't remember what the other one looked like. And I want to do a comparison. So this is now a way using retry. We can just keep going and going and going and saying, okay, this is the one that I like. And I'm going on a tangent now. I'm throwing the cape on. I'm doing Captain Tangent myself right now. Here's one thing that I really
here we go.
That is super important. So obviously this guy originally had some sculpt on him, like some scales on his arms and his heads. When you're remeshing, you're reducing your polygon count. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the control key, make a marker at this point. I'm going to divide him up a little bit. Let's give him a little bit love. So now he's sitting there. You can see him now smooth. And I'm going to, in a subtool, and my preferred method now is going to project and saying I want both geometry and color and actually doing a project history. So I want what the original model was, and I want to start projecting that into this mesh here.
Thomas Whittlesbach says 80 million polygon model. Who would do something like that?
Thomas.
Well, wait until I tell him that he can render his 80 million poly in Redshift.
It's coming.
Just wait for that one.
Sit tight.
So to highlight this again, we have with the remesher, you've got a couple with version 4.0. You now have a retry, so you don't have to keep going undo, redo just to see between the sculpt and the remesh. So you can be able to do a lot of evaluation there. You can keep your Polypaint, and there's a new system to try and speed up the process. On top of the remesher itself, also has gotten speed improvements too. So 4.0 is faster. It's got a system to try and make it even more fast when you're doing remeshes. And then we've added a button to make that streamline even smoother. And we added a key Polypaint. So there's your update to ZRemesher. We've added quite a few little nice things in there. Again, like Ian said in the beginning, very flow oriented, production oriented in the sense of just trying to produce your artwork and get going back to sculpting. So one other item too that I want to highlight coming off here, we're going to bring up again Florence Godzilla here. So let's not have it be that color. Let's go a little bit in here. Okay, so this beautiful sculpt, gorgeous, just a beautiful sculpt. Okay, so I'm going to look at just the tail, and we're going to solo it out so you all can see this really good. All right, and so you can see there's a crease line right here on the tail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some more creasing in here. So this is something that I like to use often, is using ZModeler. I'm going to go to the point action. I'm going to hold the space bar, and I'm going to go to crease, and I'm going to say shortest path. Like this is another one. I don't know if people have seen this yet, maybe that are watching. This is something we've added several versions ago, but this has been a big time changer for me too, because now I have complete control even more of where I want edges to be creased. So I don't have to click one edge, two edge, a third edge, and a four edge. All I got to do now is click one point. I can go along that same line, click, and you can see all of them got creased. And now I can just continue moving down the tail. As you can see, as I keep moving down the tail, it just keeps adding to the existing crease that I already have. So I'm going to go all the way down the tail, and it's just the shortest path. So I can come all the way down. I'm going to follow this down here, and see I'll come in here and say, let's go up to there. Right. So I now have a crease ending there at the tail, coming all the way back to here where I have a edge looping crease going on. Why might I want to be able to do this?
Oh, why?
Why? ENS.
Yeah.
Well,
should we not sleep on this one too?
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll give you your moment. This is one of your babies. Okay, go ahead.
You guys are out of control. I love it.
This one was
Ridiculous.
near and dear to me. All
This
right.
fogged up his glasses, people. This fogged up his glasses because he was so teary. He had
Get
to
another
wipe them.
mask.
Go
Very
ahead,
good.
Ian.
Look.
Go ahead.
I create UVs in ZBrush, and I love it. And I was like, I want to know exactly which area is going to get unwrapped. And for hard surface and for characters, I want to be able to say, this is my cutting seam. So I was like, hey, what if we did this with creased edges?
You were like Spider-Man, a man
was
on
like,
a mission with great
just-
power, great
just
responsibility.
Hear me out, guys. Just hear me out. And honestly, yeah, good. I'm just saying, Paul, what that hard surface organic sculpting. Continue. I don't want to
I
interrupt.
look
I'm so
back on
sorry.
this with fondness. I want to draw attention. Ian's a peculiarly funny guy. He came to work with a very strict regimen, wanting and hoping that would be implemented every day. He would come and chisel away a little bit further, a little bit further. It was like breaking out of Alcatraz. And sure enough, here we go. We found its way to the
Apparently, I've also become a passenger on this ride that we call Stream right now. You guys, this is the Ian and Louis.
Sit back
No,
and
no, no,
relax.
no.
Take it away, Paul.
Passenger. I'm on the ride here.
Hold on, let me clear
Okay.
the tears out of my eye. Continue, Paul. Continue.
All right. So
Matthew,
as
Beth, hold on,
Ian
hold on.
said, people,
Active intro,
come
since
on.
Tom
They
did
want to
it
see this. What?
some entertainment is fine and dandy.
Okay,
Carry on.
great. I'm glad we can entertain at least. I want to say it. I want to say it, but I don't want to say it because you never know. Okay, so like Ian said, we have now given you the ability to use crease edges to put where your seam lines are going to be. So the UV menu has been reorganized. So you have your projection UVing, and then you have your create UV, which this is taking advantage of UV master. So this button is actually calling UV master. So we now have a creased edges ability to say, hey, this particular tail, I want you to look at the creasing. I want you to unwrap based upon the creased edges. So now if I morph this, you can see I get that tail where I'd want that edge to be. I want it at the bottom, right, of the tail. I want to control that. That's exactly where I want it to go. So now with crease edgeability, you can do it. And I'm telling you, if you're going to take advantages like Ian does, if you're going to do your UVs right here, then you should use that ZModeler shortest path creasing. It's going to save you so much time. I normally, when I'm doing this now, I will set, here we'll unmorph that. It's actually playing pretty good on the stream. That's good. I like to now with the ZModeler, when I'm going to go do this, I also like to go over my edge and set the edge to complete. So now I can click one edge and get a complete edge loop. And then with the point, I can click. And then the face, don't forget, you got creasing options here, but sometimes I'll turn off do nothing. So if I click on a face, it's not doing any kind of Q meshing, deleting, or anything like that. I can control and in essence make a brush here now that's just creasing for the purpose of making these UVs, right? And then I'd like to also call out that we added a crease seams. So if you have existing UVs and you don't have any, creasing, that button is going to look at all the islands that you have and put a crease on those edges around those islands anywhere that you want. Okay, so that is also a very nice ability to have something like that too. So we've done it in 2 locations. You can control your creasing and we unwrap it. Then you can take your islands that already exist on existing UVs and then create creasing with one button based upon that as well too.
Yep.
Yep.
And for those who don't know too, and maybe Paul, we could show this as well. Once you have your UVs, you creased edges and you UV unwrap, you can take that into UV master and use that as a way to organize your UVs as well. So if you have multiple cuts and now you want to kind of organize that, you can go ahead, you can copy those UVs, create a clone, and then just start working through and then reorganize and then paste those back onto your existing subtool. So then you update. And so you have more control. So now you can select those edges and then you can also organize with UV master.
You call it like a preliminary guide for your UV process.
Yeah.
Right. So this is an example of what he was talking about, the UV master. I've just laid some UVs out based upon polygroups for him. So I can copy the UVs on the demo soldier, go back to the one that's got the actual maybe sculpting, walk back down so I can you look at the same thing. It's the same thing. And then I can say paste my UVs. And now this has got, if we morph this, you can see your UV layout on that. Okay. And unmorph that. Okay. And then now if I do this, I have no polygroups. The benefit now is I can see the seams. And now you can see wherever are creased edges, that's actually a border of an island. So this is taking advantage of those creased seams. But I'm going to go back to the polygroups because there is one more thing that I like to show with this. Okay, so in this, you can actually flatten. And that floor grid is region 0 to 1, 0 to 1. Okay, so what I can do also, I don't know if some of you are aware of this, we are just doing Tangentville today. I love it. Okay, so I can hold the control key when I have Gizmo and tap. And that's going to mask every polygroup out, but the one I tapped on. Why? Because now watch, I can even say I can probably mask this one off. I can now move this in space. And actually, I'm changing my UVs right now. So I'm changing how this sits in my UV. So I can say, oh, I want this to sit straight up like that. Okay, now these are maybe, I want the same thing for these. I want these to kind of sit more like this. So I'll move this off, switch to this one. So I'm actually adding my islands inside of ZBrush with UV master as well. So obviously you don't want to have overlapping UVs and you don't want to go past the border. That's why we're showing you the floor grid. And then you can size down if you want to as well. And then these are all being manipulated in the flattened state when you're using UV master. So if you want flatten, those are the UVs. So even I added them, they're all going to be there. So I can copy those now, go back to this model. And then I can come in here and then I can paste those. And then those are going to give me my new UVs, right? So you can see there's the smaller one. There's the 2 I moved to be more of a vertical. So you have those controls. So this is where that new option of creasing just gives you a little bit more extra items for it. All right. So that's everything that I'm going to show. We're going to do a little switch now and Ian's going to take over. Yeah. And he's going to start going. So we're going to do a musical chairs.
Plus for Paul Gabriel from around the globe.
Sure. Okay, great. Thank you. I'm glad you were here. Thanks for joining me. And let's go. Buckle up for Ian. Let's do the switch. Ready? And switch. Louis, you entertain.
Well, from what we've seen so far, the people are happy in the chat and they are elated about some of the new features and functions that have been added to the upcoming version of ZBrush. We're very happy to be here live to show this to you around the globe. And up next is going to be Ian Robinson with a continued service to the public here and to artists around the world and showcasing some of the extended functionality in this version of our software. I want to thank the entire Maxon team around the world and everyone here behind the scenes who has been working diligently. Paul, Gabriel, all of our colleagues who are not on cameras that help to make this possible, as well as the
It'd
programming
be really
team.
easy to put them on camera in here, though.
Well, no, I'm talking specifically about all the people who help make all the features and things happen. And I actually want to say, before we get too carried away here, I want to thank the countless many that have joined the beta teams over the years to make.
And there's beta images behind us right now.
Yeah, that's what you're seeing.
Yeah.
Hey, man. I'm here. We're here.
Okay.
That's what I'm going to say. So I want to thank the beta team for constantly and consistently over the years helping us to take ZBrush further with their inputs and their insights. really high level artists coming to the forefront and giving us feedback and also helping to make this. And so it's our software collectively as a group of global artists. So thanks very much, everybody, for the continued help and fanfare. Paul Gabriel, how do you feel here live on the couch?
I feel great. I feel like the type of sandwich I would be, Charles. That's a great. It's Philly steak and cheese, maybe. Although I do like.
What
I do
the
like a
heck
good
are you
turkey.
talking about? What?
He's asking me what kind of sandwich would I be if I could be a sandwich.
Oh,
That's
you were
I'm answering the question.
Charles
Okay.
Logan, ladies
I
and
don't
gentlemen,
know.
coming clutch here. What kind of sandwich? So you're here on the couch. There's a joke there, but I'm not going to say it. We're live. Up next, Ian Robinson. Are you ready to roll?
Look at him.
Yeah.
He's
I think
in.
he's ready. I think it was
He's
a
in.
candid smile across the. That was creeped out. Actually, it was a creepy smile. Earlier, he's got the meme, the masky meme. But ladies and gentlemen, clap your hands, tap your keyboards, do what you got to do. Ian Robinson, our very own mobile correspondent, is now
Hey.
not mobile, on the desk. Take it away, Ian Robinson.
Well,
We're yelling into the microphones, and here we are.
Well, again, thank you guys so much. Also, Paul, thank you so much for the awesome demonstration. So hopefully everybody's really excited about what's coming in 2023 because it's just amazing. Again, we always want to try our best to make your time that is valuable worthwhile and get what the results that you're looking for as quickly as possible. So, the idea here is to improve upon, and there's no difference here with adding Redshift into ZBrush. Redshift in ZBrush is, for me, is a really big game changer for a couple reasons. One, anybody who's rendered before, you might know that rendering takes time, and sometimes when you're in the middle of a project, you want to see what your render is going to look like, or you want to have your character kind of like stand out a little bit, especially if you're trying to push it to get approvals, or you're just wanting to showcase something fast and not have to optimize your mess to ridiculous levels and try to push it out to other programs. Now you can use Redshift and ZBrush to do exactly what you want to do and see your model and what it would look like rendered. And you can even use these for portfolio or approvals, etc. So it's going to be really beneficial. Here, I actually have a Redshift render of this cheetah that was done by Benchar. Amazing model. We showcased it at the summit, and yeah, it's just super awesome. So this is a clay render, and I'm just going to go ahead and hit render real quick, just so you can kind of see it in real time as it's popping in that global illumination, and then it's coming through. Now we have a lot to talk about when it comes to like getting started in Redshift. So we're just going to go ahead and cover the overall synopsis of it. But again, this is going to be the first version of Redshift within ZBrush, and we're going to be adding more features as we go along. So as you get this version down the line, we have plans, we have ideas, we have thoughts. So, but feel free to ask your questions, because if you weren't there for the summit and you're seeing this for the first time, or you just kind of want to go through some stuff, feel free to ask some questions and I'll answer them as best I can. So this is a clay render, and you can see I have a nice shiny floor, and I'm loving it. I love how we're using an HDRI at the moment. So let's just go over the basics. How do you even start getting a Redshift render? So by default, what's going to happen right now is I'm going to come into render, and there is a Redshift renderer button. Now, by default, this will be turned off. So if you have a perpetual license of 2023, you get the bridge of Redshift in with your perpetual license, and all you need is then a Redshift license. If you have the subscription to ZBrush, you will have the bridge to Redshift, and you'll have the CPU version. And if you have a Maxon 1 license or you have a Redshift subscription, then you'll get CPU and GPU and the bridge on top of it. So this way, you'll always have this feature right up here at the top. So you'll see this active, and you just need Redshift in order to make that active. So if I come in right now and I hit render, it's going to do like a BPR render. So you just come up here to Redshift, turn that on, and then you hit Shift R just like you would with a BPR render, and then it's going to start populating that render. And the first thing after this render is I'm going to showcase a couple little things. One is materials. We have a few different material selections. It's changed since the announcement at the summit, so I'm going to go over that. And I'm also going to show you render region, which is actually available in your current version of ZBrush if you want to just render a section. So if you had a model and you're just doing BPR renders too, if you just hit Control R, that's going to go ahead and just look at a section of your model and then render that portion. And that in itself is like super helpful when you're trying to just see what your model is going to look like, but you're not quite sure if you want to spend the time rendering. Now with materials, if I open up the material section here, we're going to notice a couple things. First off is that we have 4 categories. We have our matte caps materials, our standard materials. Then we have Redshift Polypaint materials, and we have Redshift preset color materials. So the difference between Redshift Polypaint materials and the preset color is the Redshift Polypaint materials actually respects the Polypaint or the vertex color that you have on your model, where the Redshift preset color is going to take the color that is being projected by the material and apply that to your model. So in this case right here, I just have a standard clay material by Redshift with Polypaint, and then I have the Polypaint on my actual model here, and that's what's giving me that look. And I'm going to go ahead and just cancel that render for a second. And the most important thing to really take away from this is that if you wanted let's say I wanted this to actually look like gold. So I'm going to go ahead and say I just want that kind of gold model. And here I'm just going to turn off the Polypaint. You can see here that the gold material is just giving me that gold. So you have different material options to select, and you could definitely pick and choose the materials that you would like to play with. I personally have been sticking a lot with the Redshift Polypaint material since I'm used to painting my models, making them look really, really cool painted, and then I use the material on top of that to get a final render. And I'm going to show you another example too right here. So I have this fighter model I've been working on for a while, and what you're going to notice is this is still clay material, but off over in space, I have two planes. And this brings me to emissive rendering. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the material tab, and I'm going to dock this on the left-hand side so everybody can see. When we pull up a when we pull up a Redshift material, whether it be Polypaint or a preset color, if we go to material and then we open up our modifier tabs, you'll see that we have new options. And a lot of these options are just going to control the look and feel. More specifically, when we talk about emission, I'm going to focus right down here for a second, and we can see that we have an emission weight. And right now, my clay is set to 0, of course. But if I hover over and I quickly select this material by left-clicking my mouse or pressing on the pen on the material, dragging and hovering over the object that has the material baked, I can quickly select that material, and I can see that I have a emission weight of 15. So how can I use this? So I'm going to go ahead and actually frame him up. I'm going to do a quick render region. So Control R real fast, and that's just going to pick a spot somewhere on my model, and it's going to do a quick render. How are you loving this feature so far, Paul? Have you been playing with it a little
I've
bit?
been a ton. I think it's very useful for getting a really good design, see where it's going, getting some good renders. Like I did with the mask, I had it up already with some Redshift materials, and right out the gate, I can start seeing where I'm going and changing, making some sculptural changes. That's where I've really embraced it as well too, before even just rendering it. I'm just using the Redshift materials inside of ZBrush now. That's a key thing. There are three. Really, now I think 4 types of materials, really.
Yeah.
Good point.
Because there's matte caps, there's standards, and then there's 2 types of Redshift materials that we've done. We've got Redshift materials that are handling with Polypaint and ones that are not with Polypaint. So that is also something, as Ian says, you're saying for the stream today is
Don't sleep on this.
Don't sleep on it. Just that alone, having the Redshift materials right inside of ZBrush's workspace too is huge. Besides the fact that you're just rendering, I'd also like to point out a point. Someone was asking, like, go Z. There's no point. Again, I want to iterate. This is Redshift inside of ZBrush. Like, there's no reason to go anywhere else. It's happening right there for you, all right within inside of ZBrush itself. So also, Ian's going to be highlighting big time. The one of the big obviously advantages of this, I don't need UVs. I don't need displacement maps. I don't need normal maps. I don't need texture maps. I don't have to have any of that. I just click render inside of ZBrush, and I get a render using Redshift. So that's a big thing to understand. I'll kick it back to you.
Oh, thanks, man. Sure. Well, that's the thing too. So I'm showcasing rendering while we're streaming, and this was something that I thought would be very useful to showcase too, because anybody who may be live streamers out there who like to showcase their work live, rendering can be daunting to your actual system, right? Well, something that I've noticed that's really beneficial with rendering in ZBrush with Redshift is that I've had models up to 96 million polys, because why would anybody do that? But I've been able to get renders out in just a couple minutes. And again, not worrying about optimizing my mesh, not worrying about trying to figure out where to send it. I could just test and play with all that stuff here, and it just helps my workflow out so much more. So you've seen the clay rendering, and what's really, really cool is I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to showcase and reiterate something that Paul showcased, is that I'm going to turn off this little eye right here, even the little material, and I'm actually going to pick another materials. So just for funsies, let's actually make him a rough metal. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come on down to my Polypaint. And I'm going to say fill color. Now I want to make sure that I'm just filling with the material because I don't want to get rid of this color. I think this color looks pretty cool, maybe. And then I'm going to go ahead and say fill color. And then I'm going to come up to my tool, and under my subtool menu, under the folder, I'm going to click this little cogwheel and apply last action. So everything that's in my folder now will get that material applied to it. And so this way I can actually, if I'm using external lights and I want to have just my character be affected, I just group them in a folder, and then I can go ahead and do that render region. And I'm going to preview to see what that looks like. And what's really neat about this preview region again, sorry, is that, again, I just get to quickly get a nice little render out of it and say, oh yeah, that actually looks pretty cool. So now I can go ahead and shift R because now I want to see the whole model in its glory and what it looks like. And what's really cool is that's actually going to lead me early into another benefit, which is render recall. And render recall for me is a game changer because rendering takes, it takes some time. And then I also want to be like, well, maybe I really like the first few settings, but then after a while, I started messing it up because I'm like, we'll try this, we'll try this, we'll try this. But I don't remember what I did 15 renders ago. Well, the good part now is I can actually go ahead and under render. And again, I'm going to dock this to the left-hand side so we could see this, is right up here. We have render recall. And you can see I have 33 renders done. Now, what render recall is going to do is I can click back or take the slider and start dragging it. And I can actually start to see what my settings were when I started messing with my fighter and seeing like, oh, does this look good? Does that look good? And what this controls, or what it remembers, is it stores what the render is. It also stores what your material settings were, your lights, any of your colors, and any filters that you had on it. So it's not going to remember if you take your object and start throwing it off the space and then try to re-render that position, then you move your model back. It won't remember the actual geometry location, but it will remember all your material settings, your light settings, etc. So if I could say, you know what, the metal one wasn't all that great, I'm going to go back to the clay. So then I'm going to push it back a couple times and then hit re-render. It will go ahead and it will hit those settings. Now, if you apply a material, and this is something to remember, if you apply a material, then your object is still going to have that material applied, but my clay settings will still be the same. So I can go back to my clay. I can come down real quick. I can say polygroups. I'm sorry, not polygroups, polypaint. Fill that color, and then I will refill it back with that clay material by going up to the cogwheel, apply last action, and it's going to readjust that clay. So now I could just go through. If you would like to save yourself a little bit of time, don't apply the material and just try it with some objects before you really like it, and then apply at the end when you're satisfied. But ultimately, it's a really great way to get that look and feel of what you had showcased done. And again, we're rendering in real time. And now I got my clay material back the way I liked it with the lights, and we're able to get those results very, very quickly. And this is bucket rendering. Now, if I wanted to speed up or adjust my rendering, I can actually go under the Redshift render, and we're going to take a look at a couple areas. We're going to take a look at render quality. Now, by default, when you load up ZBrush and you activate Redshift for the first time, progressive rendering will be turned on. And progressive rendering is just going to render slowly and just kind of do a progressive state where it's just going through and building that render.
It's so hard to describe progressive without actually using the word progressive.
Yeah.
I found it very useful for just when you're playing around and trying to figure out what materials I want to use.
Yes.
Yeah, it's progressive, I think.
Yep.
Then when I was done, I always would do a bucket render.
Yes, 100%.
Wow.
I do the same thing. Where I'm test playing, it's always about, just get a progressive one. You can, and of course, you could control the progressive state. You can go higher with it, or you can go lower with it. That's going to increase or decrease your render times. But once you're satisfied with it, then when you click progressive rendering off, now bucket rendering takes over, and you have a slider, the render quality up here. It actually will control the quality of your bucket render. So you can increase this or decrease this as you see fit. Then when you're satisfied, again, you can even knock this down, say, I want a really fast render. So we're going to go to like quality of 2, and I'm just going to go ahead and let it hit and then speed through. And if you want to know what your render times are, this is really cool. Is at the very top of ZBrush, you'll say R time, and that's going to tell you how fast that render was. So in this case, it looked like it was about 12 seconds. And if I kick this up just a little bit more and I re-render that, and I can look at that RT or that R time, it'll again tell me how fast that is going to be. And also gives you a little countdown timer, so you don't have to guess how long something's going to be. And you can see here, again, pretty fast. I really love this. Okay, now if you want, you can hit escape, and that's going to cancel your render. So it will stop. So if you start a render, if you're like, oh, I want to render region, but I accidentally hit Shift R, just go ahead and hit escape. And that's going to cancel out of that, and you just click anywhere in your viewport, and that will just kind of clear that, and then you can hit Control R. Again, I really like the render region because it really speeds up how something is going to look, and you can do it to multiple areas as well. So I just really wanted to reiterate that because it's just super cool to be able to hit certain spots. So I want to know what this face looks like. I want to know what his hand looks like before I commit to a whole render. Now, that being said, I do want to point out as well that under the subtool, down at the very bottom, which is subtool dependent, we have a smooth surface. So this works out really well if you have low poly models that you want to have some sort of like smoothing to. So for example, if let's just throw up a simple cube just for demonstrations. I'm going to zoom this in right here, and I'm actually going to go ahead and just drop this out of the folder I have set aside. I'm just going to hide this model here. So now I have this. So right now, if I turn off smooth surface and I go ahead and just hit render real fast, that's going to go through and not smooth my surface down. As you can see here, it looks like a cube. Yay, it's a cube. Good job, Ian. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit smooth surface, and it's going to go ahead and smooth down the surface a little bit more, giving you kind of more of that like dynamic subdivision look. And yes, if you have dynamic subdivisions turned on, you can just use that as well. But smooth surface will help if there's any faceting or anything like that that you just kind of want to clear. You can go ahead and actually turn this on, and that will help smooth that surface. Now, this is also a part of that apply last action. So if I turn this off and I want it off for everything, I can just apply last action, and that will send it to everything that is going on. And same vice versa, turn it on, then you can apply last to either the folder. So if I say smooth surface, but now I just want to make sure it's to the folder. As long as that folder is on, boop, it will be on, but I don't have that selected. Okay. So any questions so far? I've got like thrown out so much, and I just want to make sure that like.
No, people are really happy about some of the things that they're seeing and excited about the latest version.
Perfect.
They want to get their hands on it.
Cool. The next thing I want to cover is the fact that we have emissive lighting. So I have the scene here.
Hold on a second. What did you say?
Emissive lighting. Lights. Can I can show it.
Sure.
Get your glow on, man. Get your glow on. Let's
just my glow on. Okay. Well, first thing is I'm going to do is I'm going to come up and I'm going to adjust my HDR. Now, I'm going to open up my light menu, and I'm going to dock this on the left-hand side because under your light menu, you have background. And here is where you could always add an HDR in ZBrush. But now Redshift is going to utilize this and give me a nice lit scene. Now, by default, you actually would have something where the texture is off. So if I say, let's off right there, and I go ahead and I try to render, ZBrush is going to, Redshift and ZBrush are going to communicate and say like, okay, we have some default lighting. Now notice it's really dark in here. In fact, it's so dark, it's not even point rendering that. So I want to get some lighting in here. So I'm actually going to, I can do this one of two ways. I can come in here into texture and I can import. I could come into an HDR folder and I can find something I really, really like. And I can say open, and it's going to do that. Or what I can do is I can go ahead and doop, 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 doop. I'm going to go to my light box. I'm going to go to texture, and then I'm going to go under the panoramas folder. And inside, we have some HDRs or EXRs that are available for you to use. So let's say I actually want to use something dark because I want to show some lights. So I like this one. I'm going to double click this. And now it populates over here. You can see that's the one I selected. So now if I go ahead and hit render, so I'm going to hit render region just real fast. I'm going to render this little section, and now it's going to pick up the lighting in that HDR. So now you can start to see a little bit of a brick, but notice there's no lights on there. We'll get to that. Hold on. So now I'm going to go ahead and drop down my exposure because I want to make sure that it's a nice dark scene. But now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn on a couple subtools that actually has emissive turned on. So now I'm going to render region right over here. and we're going to see what we get next. And again, we're rendering, so all this is happening. And now you see that there's a little bit of purple there. Perfect. So now I'm going to do a full render just so that we can see the whole object. And right now, inside of this tube that I've built, I built a smaller tube that I've applied the emissive light. So now we have we have lighting coming through, and then the tube made of glass, so it's going to help illuminate and give us a really nice, cool effect. And again, rendering in real time, so let's just give it a minute. But as you can see, with this tool off, we had no light. But now we turn this on, and now we have light happening.
Say that again, rendering in real time. A lot of people were wondering about that.
Well, it's rendering right in front of us in just a few minutes. So I'm like, when I say render in real time, I'm talking about like this, like we're getting a really fast render now. So we're seeing the results here.
Progressively quicker too.
Yeah. Something to note, so I'm not confusing anyone, so I do apologize if I caused some confusion, is just the fact that like when you hit render, so when you're in ZBrush like this right now, here's my scene, it's not rendering. So the only time you're going to see the render is if you do a render region or you hit a full render. This is where render region comes into play. So you're just kind of sending that information to Redshift, and then Redshift is communicating and saying, cool, this is what it's going to look like, and then it's giving you that preview back. Now, what's really cool is you will be able to export out of ZBrush very easily. So let's actually turn on my second little neon light here, because I have this with emissive lighting. I'm going to hit render, and then we're going to go ahead and see what the final result is. And I'll show you some really cool ways that I've been using it with even some of the demo projects in here. There's a really cool drone that ships with ZBrush that I was really having a lot of fun with. And some of us on the dev team were like, oh, this actually looks really cool. Let's play this. Let's try that. So as you can see here, this is emissive lighting happening. And again, I'm rendering bucket render at quality 5, and we're getting really good, fast renders quickly. So again, about speeding up your workflow. And I'm working with a million topology on this scene here. But again, when you have something like emissive lighting, that's a little bit more calculation for any render engine to kick in. So the fact that we can get some fast renders quickly with emissive lighting is super beneficial, especially, again, you're trying to concept an idea or get something nice. And again, that render just took like 40 seconds. So really, really cool. Now, ways you can utilize this, of course, besides making neon lights, because I was trying to blast to the past of the 80s for my colleague Paul over there, who loves the 80s and talks about it constantly.
Oh, it's in my every single day. Unfortunate for my daughter.
Yep.
And the rest of my family and everybody else that travels with me. Nonstop.
So now we
always
have
Hall & Oates going, always.
Hall & Oates is amazing.
Best 2-person band ever. I see a face in the back saying no, but it's I challenge.
This
only
will go,
2 members.
Oh boy, this will
Two
spill into
members.
lunch. This will spill into lunch. I'm not engaging in
Good.
this at this point.
Don't
We're
engage.
live on the camera.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. It's all you.
Back to you.
Oh, back to me. Oh,
Back
I'm
to
sorry.
you.
I thought Louis was coming in.
No,
Okay,
no,
great.
I'm not coming in on that at all.
So a really great way that we can add this lighting is now. So I have this drone here that ships with ZBrush. It was done by Joseph Drost. And I've decided that, well, one of those tubes was not only cabling, but it was actually supposed to be lighting. So now I want my drone with an HDR background in space, and here it is. And I really just like the fact that we can just start adding stuff. So you can have you can minimal light source, use just an HDR, and then start bringing in elements that actually use that emissive lighting. And what's really, really cool is, again, like right here, I'm going to focus on this guy. So this is just a glass material with some color. Again, if you open up your material and you go to Redshift Polypaint materials, there was some tinted glass. So I applied the tinted glass to that. And then underneath it, I put a little light. And that's the light right there. So I'll just render region the light real fast. It's a nice bright white with a little bit of red glowingness to it. So if I zoom back out here and render region this. So now we're getting lighting activating with the actual glass, giving you some caustics, giving you some nice vibes. So you can start really playing. And I can't wait to see what so many of you are going to be doing with these features and showcasing your stuff on ZBrush Central, or when you post out your work, like, hey, check this out, work in progress. And you just start really going nuts with it. So emissive lighting, really, really cool. And then the other thing I want to talk about, well, I want to talk about a lot of things, but I really want to actually move over to Earthquake over here. So we're going to bring this guy back. I'm sure there's a lot of people here who know Earthquake. And we're just going to go ahead and actually bump up the HDR. Now, when we're going back to the HDR, the thing that we can really focus on too is we have 2 functions within this HDR setting. We have rotate with object. So when I move around, my HDR is moving with my object. But if I turn this off, this will actually just keep the HDR the way I want it and have the object wherever I want. So I can put him somewhere back walking down the street, and he's over here if I wanted to. The other thing too is that I can have the HDR active, but I can turn off the background. So I can come into here and I can just go ahead and do a render with him. And let's go ahead and just see real fast what that looks like. But again, so you could take your HDR and you can turn that off, and then you can actually have a colorized background, or if you want to use a plane, put an image on it, put in the background, create a custom scene that works out really, really well. All of that is completely up to you 100%. Now with earthquake rendering here, one of the things I want to add is we also have subsurface scatter support, and any material within ZBrush can have subsurface scatter applied. So as you go ahead and take a look at this as he's rendering through, and we're going to focus on some key elements just to really showcase it. So hopefully the chat can see this, because again, might be smaller.
They're all happy. They're just keep doing what you're doing. Everybody's happy to see this stuff. They just can't wait to get the version.
Awesome. So
Yes, and I was avoiding that. You see what I did there?
No, I'm bringing that back.
I was moving away from that topic.
Never.
So now we have subsurface scatter here. Now I'm also going to point out that under the exposure, so notice that the exposure is a little low because I adjusted it for the drone. I can actually come in here and bump up just the redshift exposure. And when I turn this back off, now what will this do is it'll actually keep the HDR background at the exposure level that I set, but then it will actually cause the effect to the model. So you can see here, now he's getting a little bit bright. And let's actually zoom in here on like his ear or something like that and render region this portion, just because I really want to make sure you guys can see the subsurface scatter kicking through. But it's just really, again, it's just really cool to be able to come in and have full control of that HDR. Now, also, speaking of which, is that it's important to note that under the Redshift renderer, we have use default panorama. This is a use default HDR that you're using to kind of get a sense of the scene. So when you render in Redshift, you are using an HDR that's set by default. You can either have that on or you can turn that off. Also, too, with lighting, just above that is rotate lights with camera. So if you have lighting that's set up, especially up here at the very top, you start adjusting some of these lightings and combining HDR with the lights that you're used to using with BPR, you can actually go ahead and say, click rotate with lights. And now when your object is rotating, it's going to rotate the light set too.
Speaking of rotations, Ian, it's also possible that Redshift can render great turntables.
Yes, absolutely. And that works right alongside with the movie turntable right up top. So when you're done and you're like, yep, I want a whole turntable, just hit your render and then boop, hit the turntable.
And the timeline. And his timeline. All the things that are already there embedded inside of Z. All those things that are embedded inside of Z still functionally work in this particular way. So,
yeah, this is important. This is important. People don't understand. This is Redshift inside of ZBrush. Right. Yep. So you're going to be able to take advantage of all the stuff that's inside of ZBrush with Redshift as well. This is why for version 1, again, it's not like this is, hey, we're done. We got so many more ideas and so many more things.
Yep.
This particular version, you'll be able to take advantage of a lot of, and Ian's going to show some more things too in his presentation of how you can take advantage of Redshift with other things with inside of ZBrush.
Absolutely. There's so much to cover. And the next actually leads me.
Wait. I have to answer this comment because it just came through. I have Apple, several Apple products with the silicon. It's amazing, actually. It's very impressive how fast it renders.
Yeah,
I was actually really happy and giddy, like a little back to school day.
I also agree and authorize and approve that message. It is the truth.
Yeah, and that's everything. It's not just rendering. It's not just everything. ZBrush's performance across the board is going to be really great on that ARM processor because it's now compatible with that ARM processor. So yeah, it's a good one. It's continue. Sorry, giddy like a schoolboy. Go.
There you go. Perfect. Wonderful. Well, that leads me into another aspect within rendering, which is, let's go back to that drone because I really like this drone. And that is when, let's turn on, let's adjust a couple settings because I've been playing around. So I've been messing up my scene here. So I'm going to go ahead and drop down my exposure here. And if you also just want to use pure HDR, you don't want to use these lights up here, what you can do is with the first light selected, you can either turn it off or you can just do what I do, which is I go 0.0001. That just like has it on. The reason why is because it helps showcase some of the materials inside of this as well. So it's just helpful if you turn off this and you come in here, it may be hard to see your materials, which a lot of you might be used to. So just having it 0.001 actually turns it off, but still showcases the material updates. So you can have that there for you. But now, so I don't want any other lighting except for the HDR because I really want these emissive lights to glow. So now I'm going to go ahead and readjust this. And again, I'm going to turn this off. But now what I'm going to do, okay, so let's go ahead and do a render region. And let's say, all right, right here on this lens, I want to make sure that it's going well, that my lighting is coming through nice and clear, and that I'm getting everything that I want as an overall setting. Perfect, that's looking good. So now what I want to do is I actually want to apply a little bit of depth of field. I want to make sure that, in fact, let's turn this HDR on. So I want to make sure that I can have a little bit of depth of field, bringing just a little bit more realism. And there's a couple ways you can do this. We can do this the Redshift way, which is I hit the depth of field button here under Redshift Renderer. And then now I have a focus depth and I have a focus radius. The focus depth, if I has a picker, just like Dynamesh or now Sculptris Pro, I'm going to go ahead and just click and drag and point out right there on the lens is the most important part for me. And then the focus radius will determine how much that is blurring. And that's going to be blurring the object as well as the background. So I'm going to go ahead and just boost this up a little bit. And now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to do a full render just so that we can see the full effect. So just give it a second. But again, now it's just letting everything happen and just bringing just a little bit more elements. So maybe it feels like it's just in that scene. And so this scene might be a little bit dark. So let's actually.
What do you typically like to do while you're waiting for renders, if you have to wait at all? Because this is really fast. Now you maybe have to modify your behavior.
Well, what I used to do was like go hit render, and then I'd like go make a cup of coffee or go
not anymore.
And now I hit render, and I come back, and it's like it's already done. It's already done, and I'm like, okay, great, next. Sometimes it's done before I even get up, which is really awesome. So again, it's just speeding up that process, but illuminating the scene once again. You can see here that the object is happening, and now the background is rendered, and you're getting a little bit of fall off. The other way you can do that, which leads me into the multiple things that you can do within Redshift now, is I'm going to turn this off and we're going to go under Renderer, BPR filters. So a lot of users are probably used to setting up a BPR render and then applying a filter to bring just a little bit of TLC to it. Well, now you could do that with Redshift as well. So anytime you make a render, what's going to happen now is, let's say I just want to grab a glow effect. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the first one, which is usually set to noise. I'm going to click glow, maybe bump up my radius just a little bit. And now I'm going to go ahead and re-render, and it's going to do a Redshift render and then apply the effect on top of that. So here I just did a render region, but now let's go ahead and let's actually blur this a little bit. So Paul likes to do this a bunch, right? You like to do it?
That's my preferred. Yeah, I love using the filters for a depth of field because it's real time. I can see it. Yeah,
it's super awesome.
You can change it real fast. I don't have to sit there and re-render and re-render and re-render and re-render and re-render. I'm just doing it live. And by the way, the computer has 64 gigs of RAM, if I remember right?
Yeah, this one has
12 core Threadripper.
Actually, I maxed this one out. I went with 128 gigs of RAM.
This has got 128 gigs.
Yes,
of RAM.
but I've been testing everything on I've been testing a lot of my stuff on a Ryzen 9 with 32 gigs of RAM. And it's amazing.
I've been doing a lot of tests on my MacBook Pro and i9 that's 5 years old, in all honesty, and it's been fine too. Yeah, because you got to test on multiple machines. So yeah.
Yep. So again, you'll be able to now really apply BPR filters. So you can do the way Paul likes to do it with the blur, or you can even. I'm going to actually do something crazy here. I'm just going to go. This is for you, Louis. Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna turn on displacement. And I'm just going to crank it up. And then let's go ahead and just re-render it.
Yeah, and again, the material things again came up with the question is we gotta make your own understanding here. He's looking at a Redshift material now inside of ZBrush. I don't like this is a Redshift material that's actually being rendered even in your viewports. You're looking at them.
Yep.
So when you render, then obviously all the render settings kick in, like global illuminations or anything else, like subsurface and things like that are going to kick in at render time, like any renderer. But you are getting now Redshift materials. It's very different than just also only having the mag caps and the standard materials. You have now three, in essence, materials. You have our standards, our mag caps, and Redshift, and they'll all work with the Redshift inside of ZBrush. Another advantage of why we have Redshift just staying right within ZBrush. We can take advantage of these little things like this. And what Ian's showing right now, you can render with Redshift and now use the filter system.
Yep. And so you can go nuts with this. You can go as wonky as I'm going just to kind of demonstrate it and show it off, or just, again, just the idea that you can do all of this with ZBrush. So when you're trying to get your models approved, or you're trying to just get something that looks really nice, whether it be for your portfolio, whether it be for your work, whether it be just for fun as a hobbyist, and you don't want to sit there all day long just trying to optimize things, you can do this with super high fidelity models. So again, one of the coolest things was actually rendered that Godzilla you showed earlier. It's about 95 million polys, and I rendered it in about 105 seconds. So a little over a minute and a half. And again, it was just really, really nice for it to produce that kind of speed and quality. So again, so you have a lot of capabilities here to go ahead and just play around. One of the other things that I slightly skipped over, and I didn't mean to, so I'm going to go right back to it, kind of calling myself out here.
Horror! How dare you?
Yeah, it happens sometimes. So I'm going to go ahead, because we're actually going to talk about the floor and how to get like a shadow catcher and stuff. For those, again, who hadn't seen our first presentation, I'm going to go ahead and go over that here. So under Redshift Renderer, right under the Redshift turn on button here, we actually have a material. Now, I built a shiny floor material, but let's actually dock this on this side, so then we can kind of see the materials here. So with the shadow catcher, you can actually turn any subtool into a shadow catcher, because underneath the modifiers of that material, you'll actually see here is shadow catcher. So it's either it's 0 or it's 1. If it's 1, that means it's on. It's going to capture material. It's going to capture shadows. If it's 0, then it's going to be off and it won't capture. Now, what we have is we have a shadow catcher default for you already. So you don't have to sit there and try to reinvent the wheel every single time. So what I'm going to do is over here on the Redshift side, this material here is actually calling the floor. So if I turn this floor on, this material is looking at this floor. And then I'm going to come here. And as you saw earlier, when I first started, we had a bit of a shininess. I'm actually going to change this to just a shadow catcher regular. And then let's go ahead and just do a render region at his foot, just to see what kind of results we're getting. And then we'll go ahead and then I'll show you the how you can kind of make it shiny. I also have these built BPR filters turned on. So I'm going to turn those off, which is over here. So bloop. Let's go ahead and just turn these off, because I really went wild with that. There we go. So we can see that this is here, and let's go ahead and now render this out.
Yeah, the other thing too, a question came up about does 2023 ship with any HDR? Yes, we actually added a ton of HDRs that will be shipping inside the Lightbox, inside of the texture menu, panoramas. Yep. So the ones that we used to ship that we had, you'll get those inside of 2023 to start. So you have multiple different HDRs to use. And yes, the Redshift materials will see the HDR for lighting, so it'll see the reflections inside your scene, and your lighting of an HDR will make the material look different if you're using that. So your question kind of, I don't want to say yes and no, because it is, but it's not like a render.
Guess what else? Speaking of rendering, does the poly count have an impact on the rendering using the Redshift?
Well, so if you do have a high poly count, if you have a super dense model, then that has to have time to send to Redshift and have Redshift do it. So the denser your model is, yes, it will affect render times. However, what we've all been playing with and really experiencing, it's not catastrophic to your workflow. So I would definitely, again, I would rely on render region with Control R just to kind of get a test sample of what it is it's looking before you do a full Shift R render or hit this BPR with it on. But nonetheless, too, I've rendered, like I said, 96 million polys in just a couple minutes, which is unheard of in a lot of avenues, at least in my experience. So again, trying to speed up that process, get them to come in and actually take a look at getting a nice render quickly. So yes, it will have an effect on it. However, I think you'll be happy.
However, I want to add to that. We've made it because, again, this is like a program, because the Redshift's inside of ZBrush, the data only need for the mesh that you're messing with, like he's messing with, only needs to be sent once. So his render is actually going to be faster on the second render than the first render, because we are not needing to have to resend all those 100 million, 90 million vertex points again. It already knows about it. So that is one of the advantages of also having Redshift inside of ZBrush itself, is we don't have to resend that data because it's there.
All right. So now that we have, you can see here, now we have a bit of a shadow being catched on the actual floor. So if we wanted to give this some sort of glossiness or some sort of like just, you know, a little bit of a shine, we can actually select that Redshift material so that we're actually modifying that. And again, that's under the menu material. And then with that selected material modifiers, for those who don't know, and then we can actually just do the simple thing. We can crank up some metalness, which will automatically give some shine. And we can also just start playing with the reflect roughness. But let's just mess with the metalness real fast. Again, render region, and just to see if it's actually showcasing on the little floor. And, you know, you might want to play around a little bit more and just kind of see, again, when rendering, I like to play around where I like to just kind of increase the reflect and the metalness. And then I'm going to come in here, render region this floor. And now we can start to see that we're getting a little bit of that shine, which is really good if you have like, you want to have that kind of like product shot. And again, you just start playing with this. So the reflect colorway, let's actually kick that up a little bit more. And just for fun, we're going to go high on the metalness, and we'll go through it one more time. So again, so this is how you could start creating and customizing little things like that. So that's a nice little shine for me. I don't want it too crazy just because he'd be walking on glass at that point. But then I'd go through and make a final render. So, and again, if you hit Shift R and you're like, oh, I want to stop and make a change, just hit Escape, tap, and then you can cancel that render at any time. All right. Do we have any other questions, Louis, coming through?
No,
Because we're getting to the point where we're wrapping up.
Yeah, we're getting to the end here.
Well, there is one thing, you know, that's a big one. I think that I totally forgot to even touch base on. I'm just saying, it's another one that's huge for future requests. Save.
Yeah.
Save next.
Save. You mean just like
Right.
just saving? So like I have this project here, and I'm like, okay, well, before if I were to come up to file and then say save as or hit Control S, that's the save as. So I'll say blah 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 blah. That's my project, right? And now I'm going to come through, and well, after this project is saved, what happens if I want to, like Paul's alluding to over there, save it again without a whole lot of issue, without having to hit Control S? Well, now you'll be able to hit Alt S, which will do, it'll just resave the project that you're currently working on. So now my project's saved. I come through here, and I'm going to go ahead and make some sculptural changes.
Hey, while you're making those changes, I just want to make sure to remind everybody that the shadow catcher is most effective on visible HDRIs as well.
Yes.
Just as a note, if you're watching.
So now I painted him up. I put some mud on him, and now I just want to go ahead and save the same project. I'm going to go ahead and hit Alt S, and that's going to save the current project. Now, if I want to, especially if you, because this is a hotkey, so you can remap this to your ZTLs if you would like. What you could do is also hit Control Alt S, and what that will do is save a next iteration. So for example, if I go ahead and just hit Control S and notice that my crazy file naming has no underscore or 001 or whatnot. Now, if I go ahead and say Control Alt S, that's going to save the next iteration. So as this saves, now it's going to take that project, duplicate it, and resave it. And then it's also going to add a naming convention on top of it, keeping it in chronological order. So if you're like me or a few other of my friends who have like subtool blah 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 011857 because I just can't seem to commit to anything, then you can go ahead and say Control S, and it will save the next order number.
Definitely an interesting way to name your files, but okay.
Yeah, so now I have the project above it. This might be a little hard to see, but right underneath it, I have _001. So it defaults to the three digits. However, if I add more to this, I actually wanted to have 4 or 5, it will respect that as well. So those are the ways you could do it. And again, it's a hotkey shortcut. So if you don't save projects or use project enough and you would like to remap that to your subtool, save as under tool, you can go ahead and remap those how you see fit. But now you do have that, which is really cool. And again, a big time saver, especially for me who's like constantly making changes and they wanting to save that next iteration and not lose the previous work before. And I did see a comment early on when Paul was demonstrating, but I would,
Holy
but I
smokes,
would
guys
like
like clairvoyant.
One back over here.
But It was about undo history and being able to save or undo history. So I just want to make sure that when you're saving a project, you can turn on undo history and save all the history you've done up to that for your project. So you can turn that on or turn that off. So then next time you come in, you can scrub through your timeline and say, well, I don't like the mud I added on him. Sorry, earthquake, that will never happen again. I can go back in time when I open the project back up and it will be there. And then I can go ahead and say Alt S and resave over that mistake. And I am good to go.
Ian called up the comment recall feature, says Daisuke Japan. Well played, sir. Well played.
So Paul.
Yep. Wait, there was a baking question.
There was definitely a baking question. And
There was a baking question. I asked if there was a question.
You beat me to the punch, as the old song goes.
Well, you want to take it? You want to take it then, or what? Because there's
go ahead.
there's
Go
the
ahead
Baker
now.
360.
There
That's
is
exactly-
the Baker
You
360.
might want to show them that and show
You're
them that
right. Okay,
So they
good.
understand that There is a baking feature specifically.
There
that we did with
is.
Redshift.
Show
You
them
know
the
what?
Baker 360 so I can make my way to the local bakery when you're done. Here we
Well,
go.
That'll take time because it has to
Okay.
keep over.
All right. Thank you guys for keeping me honest, and thank you, chat, for
We're
asking.
keeping you in the loop. We're just keeping you going
Okay, great.
on the path
So
to presentations.
I want to be able to, you want to be able to make a render and then have that render stay on your model. That's essentially it, right? So let's go over here again. Let's go down to the render. Now I stuck it on this other side, so I'm going to remap it over here. And we're going to go into the Redshift renderer. And now we have the Redshift Baker 360. Now what I'm going to do is, first off, I'm going to show you this main model here. So I have the clay on it. Let's just render region. And let's actually change some of my lighting back to make sure that the lighting was pretty set the way I would like it. So let's actually crank this little guy up here, there. And then I just want a nice solid background. Render region on his face just to make sure it's the setting that I would like to have. So we're going to go through. I also plan on making some cam view stuff in the future.
Boy, he loves his cam view.
There. So, okay. So I'm getting a render that I like. And now what I want to do is I want to be able to apply this to my material. So instead of having you sit here for an exorbitant amount of time watching me do a Baker 360, I'll just kind of explain what it does and then I'll show you the results. So what it's going to do is once you hit render and you render your whole scene full, so you're going to go ahead and come down here to the Baker 360. Now you have a few options. You have your longitude steps and your latitude steps. And what that's going to do is it's going to, by default, do 8 spins, basically like this, instead of me twisting my fingers and you're like, what are you talking about, dude? So it's going to go ahead and take a shot here, like this, like this, like this. It's going to do that. And then it's going to rotate around, look at the underside and look at the overside.
Hey, hold on. The model's courtesy of Bin Vischer, of course.
Yes, it is.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Yep.
A dear friend.
Absolutely amazing model. We actually, if you can see it, we
can reach out and touch it. Wow, we hit all the classic song titles
we
today.
really do. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not going to sing because we'll get canceled.
So I appreciate that. So it's going to go through and it's going to render, rotate your model, render, rotate your model, render. And what it's doing is it's taking a look at the render and applying that into a Polypaint. So if we look at this model right here that's underneath it, this was the end result. It's going to, now I'm going to turn off this little Polypaint right here just so you guys can believe me. And you can see here that this is with no Polypaint. And then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to turn on. And now you can see that the Polypaint's there. And I had this so that the lights were rotating with the model. So I got the dark side of the moon, and then I got the bright
Here
side.
we go.
And so I was able,
with the YouTube police.
and it was just awesome to be able to get that effect. And again, so believe me, what's going to happen is a lot of you might know if you've been to my streams. This happens usually every Wednesday around this time, which is going to lead me into another segment here in a second. Is that I usually adjust my cam views. I put my own models up there. So now I'm going to be doing that with some of these. Is getting a nice render colored version, and then I'm going to Polypaint that up. So believe you me, that's going to be happening. But like I said, this is before and this is after. And then you can control those steps. You can also preserve highlights. So if you have a really nice rim light that you want to try to preserve, go ahead and crank that soldier boy up. And if you want to go ahead and you have a couple baking options where you can have preset 1 or preset 2 just to see if it gives you a different look, kind of like a different algorithm. So definitely take a look at those and give it a shot, play with it. But again, it's all just going to place that render as Polypaint onto your model. So then you can go ahead, and if your model had UVs, you can actually go ahead and apply Polypaint as a texture and get that texture as well. So Yeah, that one's really fun. I've been playing with it a lot.
Yeah. So in essence, to highlight it, you're baking in all the rendering from
Baking it all
Redshift
in.
as Polypaint vertex information,
Yep.
right? So if you have a render you really like, you can bake
Yep.
it in, and then of course then you just export that as a texture if
Or
you want
not.
as a texture, and then there you go. And I'd also like to add, I've also used that technique to just render with Redshift again,
Yes.
too. So just pick a very simple basic material, and then it's got already rendered, and throw another Redshift render on top of that baked Redshift. You can get some cool, interesting results with that too.
100%, absolutely. Especially since we pointed out earlier, and I'll reiterate it: Redshift Polypaint materials respect the Polypaint. So if you do this and then you use that, like Paul's saying, getting that Polypaint virtually baked on it, now you can just go ahead and use your basic material and don't worry about the other coloring, because now you have that Polypaint on there, and these materials respect the Polypaint. It's respectable.
So, wait, I have to go backwards. I saw great. Did you say Soldier Boy at one point?
What?
That's exactly what he did.
I did.
Grace caught it too.
I
Did you
caught
literally say Soldier Boy at one point when you were changing a slider? Do
He
you even know you did that, or do you?
No, he did.
It was on purpose.
Okay, okay, just making sure
I
that
paused. I said,
Because we're doing song titles randomly.
we're just throwing some things around right now.
I thought, oh man,
Jeez, oh,
okay,
Beats.
Speaking of
Yeah.
throwing,
Okay.
So yeah,
we'll give you a little golf clap for your efforts. Thank you very much.
thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's some other stuff
I
you
know,
want to
well,
share. Yeah.
just pause and then take
Okay.
it away. Keep going.
All
Keep
right.
going.
No, you're good. Well, all right. Blah 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 blah. So we covered emissive. We did
It's
also
not a feature. The blah 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 part.
the blah 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 is not a feature. No,
Not yet.
Of course. Well, what I am going to do
It
too.
is a meme, the masking meme.
So again, we have emissive, we have metal, we have glass, we have subsurface scatter. So a lot of different ways that you can go through and start playing around with your renders and stuff like that. So you have a lot of really good options. Want to show off the glass a little bit more than what I had showcased before. So I'm going to go ahead and just quickly load up this this mech here, because I find that this is really, really cool. And then here, again, just to kind of showcase what some of the stuff is happening. If I wanted to give this like a kind of tinted glass, but I want to just go ahead and say, okay, this is a simple tinted glass right here, I can go ahead and select this guy. And again, calling back to what was mentioned earlier, if I go under my Polypaint and I just do my fill color here, now that this is going to be, I can come back up at any point in time and actually do the apply. So instead of doing the glass first, actually what I'll end up doing is coming down here, and I'm just going to do an overall, just a quick one, just not to keep everybody here. I'm going to go ahead and just select this kind of simple metal brush, and then I'm going to come back. If I hold shift and then open up another menu, it's going to respect my menus that are open. So that, again, that's just going to help speed up the workflow a bit. So I'm going to say apply with the material selected, fill color, and then apply to all, say yep. So now everything gets that. And now with this one selected, I'm just going to go ahead and do my tinted glass. And then you could just simply just do fill object under the color like you're used to, so you can see that. And now here, again, I'm going to go ahead and just do my render region so we can kind of see what that effect is. So this will kind of show off a little bit of the glass and the metal as well. But what's really neat, again, is that all these materials that you're going to be getting that ship with it, you can modify them to your liking. So you have a lot of time to sit there and play. So again, under the material, I can come through and I can start modifying. If I wanted to load in my own custom materials, for example, I could just select a material that I never really use. So say something like, yeah, no, you're going to use soft plastic right now. I'm going to come through here and load. And maybe I want to actually use a vinyl material that I was working on. So then I'll come through and actually, let's apply the vinyl material here just for funsies. And then I'm going to go ahead and say fill object. And now I'm going to come through and actually control region, this section here. So lots of really cool ways to come through and start diving in. So again, metal, emissive, subsurface scatter, glass, all that stuff is just going to really help get there. And then of course you could tack on BPR filters on top of it. You can adjust the smooth surface. So you can really just have a lot of fun time. And again, if you have a heavy model, like this model here, what's neat is that we actually have, this is actually array mesh. This demo project is actually building one leg and then array meshes on that side. So if I actually wanted to showcase what that looked like, so under the renderer, if I go to Redshift render down here at the bottom, I actually have the ability to disable the array mesh or the nano mesh or the dynamic subdiv. So if I didn't want that feature in there, I could absolutely go ahead and disable that. And then I could come through and hit render, and anything that was array mesh, it will go ahead and just not worry about. So yeah,
They're waiting for the announcements.
They're waiting for the
So
announcement.
they're waiting for the announcement. Oh, okay. Are we
Well,
good?
Well, there's several. Yeah.
There's many announcements. Ultimately, someone said earlier in the chat, if you want to do chat recall, somebody did say that it was 2023 is available through the Maxon website. It did pop up in the chat. People have been creeping around.
Perfect.
Should have been paying attention to the feature. I just
Yeah, it's available now.
Yes.
You can go get
Yes.
ZBrush
So
2020.
you can go get it now.
And all your information that you guys are all asking about pricing and everything is all there for you on the FAQs on maxon.net. So
And
all of that
what I
information.
yes.
And what I want to reiterate again. So first off, the stream will be recorded. So we went through a lot today, and that's a lot to absorb in just a short period of time. So definitely you can come back and rewatch. But what I want to reiterate, just so everybody's aware, is that if you are upgrading to a perpetual 2023, the Redshift bridge is included. You just need to activate a Redshift subscription, and that will go ahead and give you the Redshift alongside of it. If you have a subscription to ZBrush right now through Maxon, then you have the CPU version of Redshift included within that subscription as well. So if you want to use the GPU, then you could just go use the Redshift subscription. But if you want to stick with the CPU, you could do that. If you have a Maxon One subscription, or you have a Redshift and ZBrush subscription, then you'll get the GPU added on top of that, along with the plugin and the CPU. So just to clarify that, to keep it so that you all know, you are all getting the Redshift bridge. Just have to activate Redshift since Redshift is subscription.
More release info is available at ZBrush Central. There's a new post that's been added there for your ease of understanding all the features. Again, this has been recorded. You can watch it again and again, over and over. The other thing is, Paul, why don't you tell the people about the upcoming streams that are going to support the release of the latest version?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're putting a series together for you all. So we're not done with this one. So yeah, like we said, we're recording this. You guys can always go back and watch this as much as you want. But we are going to do a special series for the next 5 weeks. We have some guest artists joining us that were beta testers. We're going to be showing more of how you can use these features in conjunction with particular artwork. But we're going to be looking at these streams also very specific to particular styles, and also covering how you might render that on top of that inside a Redshift with inside a ZBrush. So Ian's going to be starting next Wednesday. So that's why he brought up his stream. He's going to be starting next Wednesday, showing how he would attack making a clay sculpt inside a ZBrush and then rendering it out to actually look like a clay sculpt with inside a Redshift. So we're going to be sprinkling the features and Redshift in all 5 of these upcoming streams. So we're really excited about that. We have a specific clay one. We have Shane Olson's going to be joining us for a stylized character one. I'm going to be focusing on the hard surface stuff, as I always do. Mr. Mike Thompson's going to be joining us and talking about how he's using it to do characters and using subsurface and things like that. And we're going to have a jewelry one as well with Nacho Risco. So it will all be live on our schedule and our ZBrush Live calendar.
As well as next Monday, so the 16th, this coming Monday, we're doing a webinar series with Maxon, doing a deep dive in the basics of Redshift, and I'm going to be on there. So go ahead and check that out too. All that's on the Maxon website, so you'll be able to catch that webinar. So that on top of all these streams that we're doing for the next 5 weeks.
Yep. You got 5 weeks of that. Yep, absolutely.
5 weeks of excitement with the Maxon ZBrush team, broadcasting around the globe with some of your favorite ZBrush artists. I can't believe it's happening here in 2023. This was an incredible presentation. I think that's I can speak for everybody behind the cameras, in front of the cameras. Paul, Ian, on behalf of the entire community, thanks so much for your efforts today, and thanks for helping to demystify some of the latest features and functions inside the software. I guess on behalf of myself, Louis Tucci, Ian Robinson, Paul Gabriel, we hope that you'll stay in the clay longer, and happy ZBrushing for 2023. We'll see you again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks. Oh, just real quick. Hold on, sorry, real quick. Tag us with the hashtag Made in ZBrush if you want us to see your work. We are looking at that hashtag Made in ZBrush. So definitely feel free to hit us up so we can see all your work, because I'm really excited to see what the community does with all these new tools. And like I said, it's available now. So go get it, go play with it, go have fun. Can't wait to see all the amazing art. And again, just thank you to everybody. This whole team has been amazing. And thank you to the community for coming in and joining us. We appreciate you being here. So no further.
He said it in a great way. Again, one more time, thanks to the beta testers who helped to make this version all it was. Again, everybody have a great day, and we'll see you again next time. Bye for now.
Now go rewatch.